Hey,
Yeah.
What's going on, folks? Holy shit. There we
Or
go.
should I
Let's
say,
go.
good afternoon,
Good
Canada?
afternoon, Canada.
Uh,
For everyone that's doing the Thanksgiving today, or tomorrow, or Monday, or what are we, Sunday? Sunday
Sunday.
tomorrow, today or tomorrow?
Yep.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy
Be safe.
Thanksgiving. Yep.
Don't put yourself in too big of a coma. I know I will. We're having turkey tonight and tomorrow, so I'm going to be right off by tomorrow night. But
Dude,
anyways,
usually when you do turkey, it's coma for at least 2-3 days. You know,
right?
maybe 4 or 5 if you can stretch it out. But yeah.
Fuck.
Yep.
I get so sleepy off that.
What do you guys? Speaking of which, what do you guys, Scott? What do you guys do for Thanksgiving over in England?
we
Sorry,
don't have it.
really nothing
It's
at all.
non-existent.
It's non-existent. It's an American thing.
That's
Damn.
shitty.
So when's your next holiday up there?
Christmas.
Christmas.
You gotta go from
Damn,
now all the
Birdo
way to, oh,
Christmas.
dude, that sucks.
Yeah.
Y'all gotta come up. Y'all gotta come up with something in between.
We have holidays. So where you do where America do the fireworks on the 4th of July, we don't. We set fireworks off on the 5th of November,
Okay.
which is bonfire night. It's known as over here, also known as Guy Fawkes Day.
Oh, V for Vendetta, that movie.
Yeah, so if you see V
that's
for Vendetta, that's based on Guy Fawkes. So basically, Guy Fawkes and his crew tried to blow up the House of Parliament, and they were caught.
Shit.
And then as a result of that, they burn effigies of the guy on bonfires on November the 5th. And they set fireworks off. Now, this is the weird thing with that one. For the longest time, it was a celebration that he got caught. But as times changed, it's almost like a celebration of rebellion. He's become, this is why you see the mask appearing in different things for V for Vendetta. It's almost a celebration of anarchy that somebody stood up to the officials. It's known over here as Guy Fawkes is the last man to enter the Houses of Parliament with honest intentions.
Oh,
It's kind of because he was there to blow it up. But
I like
he's
that.
there to blow it up.
He is an absolute rock star. The story of Guy Fawkes is incredible, and maybe one day we can do it on the channel. But it is it's an amazing thing. So we basically start at the end of this month. So we'll have Halloween at the end of this month, and then we have a week later we have bonfire night. So a lot of these things kind of link together. So a lot of the kind of the treats and the drinks and the foods that we eat sort of spread over a week. And then we move into, once bonfire night is out the way, it's pretty much Christmas. So all the stores go Christmas crazy and all the Christmas shit.
We already are.
It's already happening here.
Yeah.
This is what I love about Halloween. It's that weird time of the year where you can go into a store and you can see lovely things like little elves and shit next to severed heads and skeletons on the shelves. It's that really weird kind of.
That's where some of us got the twisted idea for Elf on the Shelf.
So you get some really odd kind of shit. So I mean, it's because in our superstores we have what's called the seasonal aisle, where it's like, so in summer it's all gardening shit and things like that, and then for Halloween it's Halloween stuff. But because Halloween isn't as big a deal here as it is over there, it's normally half Halloween, half Christmas. So you can literally turn around and you can it's horrendous one side and lovely and sparkly the other. And that's it's a weird thing.
Bipolar. See, I knew it. It's kind of funny you say that about stretching it out, because my background here is for Day of the Dead, which is a lot of people associate it with the Mexican. There's a whole bunch of theories on whether it was Hispanic origin or goes back over into Europe. But they stretch it out to as far out in some cases as November the 6th.
Yeah.
So you get that. All I know is it's one of the options I'm doing for my team for theme dress up for Halloween, because all you got to do is paint your face. Rest of it, you put a shirt on, you put a tie on if you're a guy, and that's it. You're good to go. So that should be an easy one where nobody, all you got to do is go out, buy a little white face paint, get somebody to paint black on your, diagrams on your face.
That's cool.
Hopefully not pentagrams.
I can see Doris is asking in the chats about Halloween. So before we get into this, I'll kind of explain quickly what Halloween's like in England. It's nowhere near as big a deal as it is in North America. It just isn't. It is growing, and it's growing a lot, and it has grown significantly since I was a kid to where it is now, and I can see at some point it being as big as it is over there as it is over here, because it's after Christmas, it's the number one that the most money is spent on. For the longest time, it was Easter. So it was Christmas, people spent the most money on, then Easter. Now it's Halloween. So after Christmas, number one, the market for Halloween is huge. So stores are starting to pick up on it. And I think what it is, I think it's my generation and now the parents. So my generation were one of the first to go out trick-or-treating and get nothing. So me and my buddies would go out for hours, and we would walk every street, and we'd come home with very little. I mean, maybe some old dear would take us and give us an apple or something, but we didn't come home with sacks of shit. That just didn't happen. It wasn't a thing. So you could go out for hours on end, and maybe one in every 20 or 30 houses would give you something.
See,
it just wasn't a big deal.
As opposed to, I think you and I, as we've discussed, are close, but not quite the same age. We would go out, kids my age, with the pillowcases, because we didn't have the cutesy plastic lanterns, and all the other cutesy stuff. But we'd go out with the pillowcases, and we'd do the same. You up and down all over the place. And back in the day, you didn't have to worry about kids getting abducted right off.
Yeah.
Like that. So we were out there for hours, and we'd come home with the sack that the dentist would thank our parents for the next decade.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
See, we'd come home with nothing, man, but we kept the faith. We would literally come home. I mean, sometimes you'd come home empty-handed. You wouldn't get anything. And
See,
I'm
surprised you didn't turn to egging and TP in houses.
We see, this is the thing. I mean, it's again, that's not part of over here. It depends where you go. I mean, you hear incidents of it, but I've never known it in any area I've lived in. It's typically something that at the moment is very young children do. So my kids go trick or treating, but again, I mean, I'm of the generation that walked around and got nothing. So now I make sure whoever comes knocking on the door gets something. Right? So I'm always fully loaded for it, and this is the way we've always done it, because, and I think that's what it is. I think there's the generation of kids that trawled around the streets and got jack shit, and now the adults that are like, you know what, I'm going to make sure there's plenty. So we decorate the houses, and it's become a bigger thing. So seeing decorated houses has become more common. And now I'd say it's probably about 1 in every 5 houses you'll get something, which is significantly more than what it was when I was a kid.
Now, lest you think the Americans have gone alcoholic on you, we've evolved the tradition, because we back, like I said, when we were kids, we went out getting treats. But because we end up having to walk the kids around now, and it's no longer just a kid thing. Now it's a way for adults to get exercise. We have adopted a second thing. So the kids go to the front door to get candy. The parents go over on the driveway where the alcohol station is up, nice. And we go trick or drinking.
Right.
So you get the kids get the treats and the adults get a shot.
Nice.
Or a small glass of wine, or a little glass of beer or whatever. They've got set up. Oh yeah. By the time, let me put it to you this way, by the time you got done with 2 streets, if you didn't eat before you went out,
yeah, you were in a bad way.
Oh yeah. You were pretty well hammered, and you better stop. But it was kind of funny to see who makes it the farthest, with the farthest number of houses, especially, God forbid, in townhouse developments now, where you got 8 of them stacked up, where you down the driveway over the next one. Yep, down the driveway over the next one. Yeah. So yeah, you could almost say we were a little alcoholic.
I love this time of the year. I absolutely love it. I mean, I've got my decorations up in my room already. So I've got my jack-o'-lantern garland here, my pumpkin lights, and the kids made some pictures and things. We adore it. We love Halloween. And I wish more of my fellow countrymen would, because I think it's a really weird holiday. I think that's the whole point of it. Is you try and explain it to somebody, because I've tried to. We've got a lot of Europeans and Eastern Europeans that migrate and live over here. You try and explain it to someone what it is, and they'll always go, "Why?" And go, "I don't know." It's like, on the last day of October, kids dress up as monsters, go door to door, and we give them sweets. But that's weird. It is weird. It's like, it's what we do.
Well, it's called syncretus, which is taking an older tradition and kind of melding it and merging it with something that's a little more
Yeah.
modern,
Yeah.
which is kind of interesting because that's there's a lot of that, like with the Day of the Dead. The celebrations are a little bit different now than they were
Yeah.
originally. But it's
Well,
it's
this
kind of
is-
funny because it's not just the celebration of the Day of the Dead is not just a celebration about the dead.
Mhm.
Even though in America and in Mexico it's done on All Hallows Eve, which is
Yeah.
October 31st. Um, it's kind of interesting. In tradition, for them, it's more of a thing where they'll do an altar, a temporary altar to the dead in their family,
Mhm.
for that evening, and they'll actually cook up food and set it on the altar that the deceased liked.
Yeah.
And now, speaking of the syncretism, they now actually read humorous, sarcastic epitaphs
Oh,
Oh
nice.
shit.
for those family members that are still living. And
That's okay, Colette.
I personally would want to go see one of these because I can't imagine that would be like our modern day roasting, of
Yeah.
a celebrity or something over here. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, ow. So, but it's an interesting thing.
I
Interesting.
I kind of wish it was more celebrated over here than it is, because I mean, again, I've been in the States during from September onwards, and stores like Spirit Halloween and things like that. We just don't have them. We don't have things like that at all. So again, it's just not. I love walking around and looking at all the the stuff. It's the best. But yeah, I kind of wish we do that. There was a trick as well when we were kids. There was an American military base by us. That everybody outside of it kind of was from that base. They were Americans. If you went trick or treating there, you get loads of shit. So once we figured that out, that's where we were going because they were full on celebrating.
Yep.
Hey Mariah, hey Kale Burning, how you doing? And
And
the sharp things in the candy.
yeah,
I've heard that was a relative.
actually, very funny. No, actually, here in the States, it was a thing for a while. People, some very twisted, and given that YouTube is watching swearing at this point, I will be careful of my words. Um, some twisted, evil people, and that's where I will let that go. Used to put razor blades into apples so that when kids bit into them, they would obviously, do damage.
Is
Um,
there any recorded evidence of it?
oh yeah, yeah,
Are there any actual this actually happened? Because I've
yes,
heard.
right here. It actually happened to
Oh, okay.
my brother. Yeah, when we
Okay.
went out, there were people we had in the neighborhood that we were in when we were kids. We had both old folks and younger folks, and there were the folks that did not like you playing in their yard.
Mhm.
And when holidays came around, all of a sudden, surprise, they were handing out things. There was an elderly gentleman who was not very nice, who actually handed out, and my parents found a is a broken piece of an X-Acto blade in an apple that was given to one of my brothers.
Yeah.
Now there have been reports of needles and other things, and yes, if you look it up, there are actually it's public domain. There are lawsuits where people have found broken glass,
Mhm.
Oh wow.
needles, all kinds of stuff. They've also found that fruit, and some candies were either coated with narcotics or injected with narcotics.
Oh man.
So that's another
People are
reason.
messed up.
It is, and that's another reason for us as adults, parents and yeah, now grandparents, to go walking around with the kids,
Yeah.
and make sure of what's going on.
Yeah.
In our community here, because we're as spread out as we are, and we don't have sidewalks and things like that. We have a community center down by the lake, and what we do is we get everybody together, and they'll bring their car down, and park nose out, so that the back ends are in, and skip about every 5-10 feet or whatever, and have candy and whatnot. Gesundheit.
Excuse me. COVID, man.
COVID times.
You realize you sneeze more than 3 times, you're possessed.
Yeah.
We'll let that go. But we call it trick or trunking. And
trick or trunk. Yeah.
What'll happen is that the parents will come down. They'll march the kids around through, where the cars are down there, and everything's inspected and you have to sign up to be one of the people down there, and you have to be known by the community. So it's very careful.
I like that, but I also hate the fact that that's necessary.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a nice thing, but at the same time, it sucks that we live in a world where that now has to be a thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I agree with that.
It's a decent thing to do, but at the same time, it's horrible that we have to. You know, it's
right, Pizza. Exactly.
On the flip side, it has allowed me to get dressed up a time or two and scare the living crap out of kids every once in a while, which is also kind of fun.
Oh yeah, we do that.
I'm sorry if it sounds bad, but I actually, one of my favorite ones was I spooked a kid enough sitting off on the side on the porch as a supposed stuffed mannequin. I spooked a kid enough where all he did was he screamed and jumped up and down. So now you also have to be careful, because if you do that out on your porch, you can get the guy whose reaction is to turn around and cold cock you. So you got to be careful. And yes, I've known people that's happened to. So
when we were younger, when me and my wife were a much younger couple, we used to do it. Now one of us is kind of taking the kids out, and one of us is staying on candy duty at home.
Yeah.
But before we had kids and we were younger, we used to do it. So what we'd do is my wife would answer the door with kind of the bowl of candy and be talking to the kids. I'd have some hideous mask on. I'd just creep around the back of it and just standing there for
I think one of my favorite ones is we had one of the years, this is back when we were living in town. We did the front yard. It wasn't a huge front yard, but we did the front yard up as a graveyard, and got one of the dry ice smoke machines, and set it up so it was blowing across, and it just happened to work out perfectly. It blew across the yard, and I had set myself up in a shallow. We dug a shallow grave.
He said, "Moving on."
Yeah, dug a shallow grave, and just put a little straw over top of it, and laid down over top of it with my head sticking out, so you could see the face. And the kids would come up and they'd look, and you sit up and go, "Hi," and the kids would be like, "Ah!" But yeah, we had a friend who went crazy and actually set up their basement and their garage. They stripped the basement and the garage.
I've seen people do it as a
haunted house. Yeah. And he had me set up. He had me set up as a mad undertaker, and the little roomette that he designed. Blood everywhere, body parts everywhere, and people walking through it they didn't stay for long. I couldn't understand why.
I watched a great documentary called The House is October Built. And it was all about the people that go kind of like all out, like they start planning for this November 1st. It's not planning for the following year's display, and some of them are incredible. There was one who just kind of had my heart completely. It'd always be he designed some device that would do something. This one year, he took the back end of a car and rigged it to this thing. So when you walk past, it would reverse and hit the chain link fence. So it looked like a car was about to slam through into it, but it didn't. It would just come with this force. It was just the back end of the car. I'm like, that's amazing. So the car just backed into it. That's incredible. Yep. There was one, he did the hallway as well, where it had portraits on the wall, and they had people behind the portraits. It was like a dummy wall. So they just dropped them and grabbed them through the thing. And I'm like, that's amazing. But yeah, really good.
Yep.
That's cool.
And you get a lot of that done. And now they have haunted forest walks out here where you're actually not in a house. You actually walk out into the woods a la Blair Witch Project.
Oh, that's cool.
Vampire Vapes Heisenberg is what I'm vaping.
Oh
Uh-oh.
shit! There you go.
Yeah, so you had to bring up the vampire. That was the other thing I was studying was Vlad the Impaler.
Vlad the Impaler. Oh man,
which is the original Dracula.
Yeah,
that's
and one, I'll tell you what, one smart tactician, one great politician, and one twisted son of a gun. So yeah.
Oh shit.
Yep. Now, unfortunately for him, it was by necessity, because his little country was sandwiched between Turkey and the Ottoman Empire.
Oh
yeah.
shit!
So,
yeah.
you know, he was kind of one of those guys. If you ever saw the movie The Outlaw Josie Wales, where they're talking to the bargeman who says, "Yeah, you got to know whether to sing the Battle Hymn of the Republic or Whistle Dixie, depending on which group is coming through." So, and he kind of got himself stuck in the same place until he really got pissed at the Ottomans and at the Ottoman Empire, and he planted a field of 20,000 soldiers impaled.
Oh wow.
half a mile wide by several miles long, when the Ottoman army of 150,000 was coming down on Wallachia, his empire, and the sight of that was such.
Oh yeah, that's a scare tactic.
It completely turned the Ottoman off. They turned around and went back home.
Yeah, I'd be riding on in. Fuck this shit, I'm out.
Yeah,
fuck that.
It's if you've seen how it's literally guys on spikes. So the spike went in somewhere, stuff's supposed to come out of, and it came out your mouth, and you were basically there was just a sea of dudes on spikes, man.
Jesus.
That's Vlad the Impaler, who went on to become Vlad Dracula in Dracula.
Yep. Well, Dracula actually was given to him when his family was supporting Turkey, and Dracul actually stands for dragon.
Dragon, yeah.
So it was Dracul kind of went to Draconis, which was for the entire family, and from there it just kind of got twisted into Dracula. But yeah, that's where that all started from. And as far as that 20,000 soldiers was not his first kick at the can with that. He did it again with because he'd taken over once before from a guy who had killed his father and his brother. And then the guy ran him back out. He came back, and all the barons, if you will, it's not what they were called, but I can't remember the name, but all the barons that supported this other guy. It was put up your trumpet, all right.
I've never heard it called the trumpet. That's awesome.
Well, think about it. You know, what do you do? Trumpet.
Yeah, makes sense.
But
that's hilarious.
He cooled his jets for a year. That year, at the end of the year the end of the year feast, he summoned all the barons to his castle for a giant celebration. They came with their wives and their families, and he took every one of those barons and impaled them and their wives.
Oh my God.
And then took all the kids and imprisoned them and had them doing slave labor, building bricks to help build the fortresses that he then defended against from both sides. So this guy was shrewd, and he replaced every one of them with people that were loyal to him, including military, higher ranking military men. And
he sounds like a treat.
He was something. He was something. And the funny thing is, he is still to this day compared by some in Romania to be a national hero.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he's still seen as you know.
Wow.
I mean, history's written by the victors, you know. So as much as we see him as this evil thing, he was that guy. He's the William Wallace, you know. He was going to lead them to freedom, and that was they view him very differently. Yeah. So you can go to Castle Dracula in Romania. You can still in Transylvania. You can still go visit these things.
Yeah, it used to be called Wallachia.
It's gorgeous as well. I mean, it's like me and my wife are going to go for a weekend because it's not far from us. I mean, it's only like a 3-hour flight. And it's beautiful. I mean, this is the really strange thing. It's absolutely gorgeous. Transylvania is a beautiful place.
Do they have it set up for tourists, like the castle?
Yeah,
can you spend the night?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's cool.
And it's, I mean, they don't shy away from it. You know, they lay it on thick. They know a lot of people are there for Dracula and vampires.
Yeah.
They lay it on plenty thick. They're not sort of like embarrassed or shy away from it. They they embrace it. But it's not like what you think. So you hear Transylvania, you see it in movies and stuff. It's all lightning, but it's not. It's gorgeous. It's a very green area. The castles are absolutely stunning. It's crazy gothic. It's beautiful. It really is.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a show.
I'd love to see that.
There was a show they had on, I guess, is early reality TV, called the most haunted places in the world, where they would take a guy. And he would bring normal folks in, like, us, and friends in, and they would do an overnight tour and ghost, paranormal ghost hunt, if you will. And they used to. I don't know if they still do them, but they did a couple of them where people actually spent the night at Dracula's castle and went down into some of the more, not necessarily touristy places that aren't necessarily so clean and pretty, but kind of like they might point down a staircase. If you go down here, this is the dungeon that.
This is where the slave slept, or whatever.
I mean, it did wonders. It did wonders for the Transylvania tourist book, because I mean, the reality is there's probably 5% of that book is set in Transylvania. The rest of Dracula is set in England. He's in Transylvania at the beginning. Jonathan Harker's there, and he leaves. He leaves him there. So Jonathan Harker's in Transylvania. Dracula spends 90% of that book in London. And Whitby, there's a seaside town called Whitby. So you can go to the castle in the UK that he's supposed to have ran up these steps every night. So when you're kids, you tend to go on field trips to see this thing. And it's whether or not you can run the steps, because they'd say he would sprint up these steps. You make it about halfway before you feel like your heart's going to burst in your chest, because there's hundreds of them. But this was the story of Dracula, was he'd run up the steps. And then we'd be like puffing and gasping, going, hold on, he could turn into a bat. Why didn't he just fly? Why did he run up these goddamn steps and he could fly?
Because they were a wee bit more hardy than we are back in the day.
But it was
Leeds doesn't live far from Whitby.
So we have a lot of Dracula stuff in the UK. They have the Dracula castles in Whitby and things like that, and it did wonders for the Transylvania Tourist Board. It really did. It didn't do them any harm at all. But the strange reality is, vampires were a very real threat. If you were traveling through Romania, vampires were seen as a genuine threat, and they would give things to travelers. They have vampire kits where they would have the stuff they need to protect themselves. And these things go for a lot of money now. If you've got an antique one from that time, it's worth a ton of money. But they genuinely believe this was a threat. If you're traveling through Romania, don't go without one of these, and you could get the vampire kit, which is nuts.
What's up there?
Yeah, they genuinely believe it.
Late
the remarkable thing is
early 1500s. Hey, Derek.
These ones?
Yeah.
I heard they used to carve like squash and stuff, and then they just discovered that pumpkins were just easier. I don't know.
I know where that comes from. There was a story. There was an Irish story, kind of like a morality, like a folktale, I think, about a guy called Jack who was stealing from locals, and they're chasing him, and he runs away, and the devil appears before him, and the devil's going to hand him over to the. Are we still here?
Yeah.
You're kind of skipping in and out.
Yeah. We still here? I dipped out there.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Scott?
Oh, maybe not.
I think he locked up. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, while he's rebooting,
a little bit.
What I'm seeing here, Doris, to answer your question, is on the 1800s, a lot of people who left England and Ireland to come to America took their holiday traditions with them, but instead of carving, apparently they used to carve turnips. They at that point they started carving pumpkins.
Yeah.
So
Turnips must have been really hard to
Where
carve.
apparently where the name comes from is the folktale goes from Ireland. This guy Jack was stealing from the local villagers, and they're chasing him. And they're going to kill him, and the devil appears before him in the road, and he's going to hand him over so he can kind of watch the evil things they're going to do to him and commit sins at the same time, so he can harvest their souls. He then convinces the devil a deal, and he says, "Okay, if you turn yourself into a coin, because the big belief is the devil can make himself appear as anything. If you turn yourself into a coin, we can give the coin to the villagers, a silver coin.
Oh shit!
When you turn back into the devil and the silver coin goes missing, they'll all blame each other for who stole it. The time will descend, and you're about to see all this chaos that you made." Devil likes the idea and says, "Okay, deal." Turns into a little silver coin. Jack puts the coin in his wallet. In Jack's wallet is also a crucifix he'd just stolen from the villagers. As a result of that, the devil couldn't transform back. He was now powerless and trapped inside Jack's wallet. And Jack kept him there.
Oh shit!
Jack kept him there for about 10 years. He then does a deal with the devil. He says to him, "Right, I'm going to let you out, but in exchange, you can never take my soul. That's the deal. You can never take my soul. I'll let you out, but you can never take my soul." The devil agrees. So he lets him out. Devil appears, off he goes. Anyway, 20, 30 years later, Jack dies. Now, because of all the bad that he did, he couldn't go to heaven. And because the dealing of the devil couldn't take his soul. So he was forced to walk through purgatory. Devil's laughing his ass off about this and says, "Okay, I'll do you a solid." And he throws him a single lump of coal. He said, "That's so you can see in the dark of purgatory." And he throws him a turnip. So that's all he's got. So he hollows out the turnip and he puts the coal inside the turnip so he could light his way through purgatory. And he became known as Jack the Lantern, which is where Jack O'Lantern.
Jack O'Lantern. Okay.
So you get the name.
That's
cool. What's up, Brain? How you doing?
That wasn't a whole lot of fun for him, though.
No, it sucked for him.
I must have sucked for him.
So Jack Lanterns, which then became Jack-o'-lanterns, were originally carved from turnips because that was what was available. Right. I think the pumpkin comes into it when that what would have been harvested in America at the time. When the traditions moved over there, pumpkins would have been quite prevalent. It's around about the right time of the year to be harvesting pumpkins, so it makes sense that pumpkins became the thing. And then I think it's linked largely to Sleepy Hollow as well. When Sleepy Hollow was released, there's a mention of that I know now quite a lot of the time. You see the Headless Horseman's got a pumpkin instead of a head, but that's not in the book. But there is an incident where Ichabod Crane wakes up and what he thought was the horseman's head is actually a smashed pumpkin. So maybe that lent into it as well. I don't know. But that's typically where jack-o'-lanterns come from, why we carve pumpkins. People still carve other vegetables over here. We still see turnips and we still see all kinds of things that are carved with lights.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be cool.
Little things. So it's I don't know if you've ever seen melons. People carve watermelons. They look really good. But watermelons. There's a watermelon carving. Yeah, it looks incredible. Yeah, if you get a chance after this, Google watermelon carving, and some of them are absolutely incredible.
Now, see, the only other thing I have not personally seen melons, be it cantaloupes, honeydews, or watermelons. But the other thing that we do is gourds come out this time of year. So you see gourds done.
Gourds everywhere.
A lot. And one of the cool ones is you'll get the one that's the ball at the bottom, and then it's got the neck that comes up and crooks over. Yeah. So what you'll have people do is they'll take the front where it crooks over, and they'll carve like a little evil elf face on that, and then paint up the neck so it looks like a little hat that's coming up and flopping over, and attach a little bell at the end of it. Seen that a lot. But that's wow.
I grew pumpkins one year, and I vowed I'd never do it again because it became like an obsession. They were like my babies. I'd be going out there checking on them all through the year. And I was like, I can't. I thought I can't do this again. It became an obsession, my pumpkins, because it's a really weird one. If you're growing them for jack-o'-lanterns, you have to basically make Sophie's choice on your pumpkins. They get to a certain size, and you have to decide which ones are going to die and which ones are going to live. Because if you want one to grow huge, you have to kill the other ones from the vine, and typically you'll get 3 or 4 on a vine. So you're thinking, right, whichever one looks like it's doing the best at this point, you cull the other ones off so that one can grow. And you leave yourself, and that's how you grow kind of giant pumpkins. Anything else on the vine, otherwise you're only getting about that big. You're going to get really big. You're going to kill the other ones off. And I became obsessed with this. So I'm chasing slugs and snails and shit away from my pumpkins. I'm laying down hay so they don't ride. They're like, this is too much. I can't do this again.
Oh, now if you want to keep snails and slugs away from your garden, I'll tell you that the best thing in the world to do is to go out now and get a 6-pack or a 12-pack of beer and set it out somewhere in the house and let it age out until next spring. It'll be good and nasty by then. And when you pop it open, go around and cut the top of it off and then bend the top down into it so it's not a sharp thing at the top. And set it down at the edges, the four corners of your garden. And what will happen is the beer will attract the slugs. They'll crawl up into it, drop down into it, and of course there's a little bit of salt in there. Which doesn't do good for slugs or snails. But number one, they'll drown. Number two, they'll get dried out by the salt content, and they will leave your plants alone. And it works real well.
It was slug. Everything wanted to eat my pumpkins. The birds wanted a go at them. There were mice wanted to take a go at these plants. So it became, I'm like, this is too much. I'm too obsessed with this. So I've got to stop. The funniest one I heard was to keep mice away from your pumpkin. This is so dumb. So I'm sorry in advance for this, but it was you need a claw hammer, a bag of peanuts, and a bottle of chocolate milk. And they said, right, so on night one, you put down 3 peanuts and a bottle cap of chocolate milk next to your pumpkins, right? The mice will take that instead of the pumpkin. I'm like, okay. So night 2, do the same thing. 3 peanuts, bottle cap of chocolate milk. All right. And do that every night for 6 nights. On the 7th night, you just put out the peanuts. You don't put the chocolate milk out. All right. So then what will happen is the mice will come knock on your door and ask you where the chocolate milk is, and you hit them with a claw hammer.
I like it.
I like it. I like that.
That beats sitting there with the window overlooking your garden with the pumpkins with a BB gun. Hold still, you little varmint. Guess what? A BB will kill a mouse.
Well, I might not never grow pumpkins again, but I swear everything inside me, when it gets to about March, thinks I kind of want to grow some pumpkins. But I might never do it again.
Did you try doing it on a raised bed?
Oh, I tried everything. I tried everything. I was honestly, I'll tell you how bad it got. Right.
Have a great evening, Cal.
I'm not going to go into full details. People will talk about this. I'll tell you the truth. But there was cross-pollination was a thing. You need bees. So pumpkins are the ugliest plant in the world, except for a period of about 1 week, where these massive yellow orchids come out the pumpkin plant. So when you first grow pumpkins, the first sort of spike that comes out looks like a cartoon drawing of it. It's perfect. Like if you've ever seen the movie WALL-E, the little sprout that comes out the shoe at the end, they look like that pumpkin plants. They look like a cartoon almost.
Yep.
And they stay like that for about 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden they become these very large plants. And then these amazing orchids grow from them. These stunning yellow orchids. Pumpkin orchids are beautiful. And they last about a week. And in that week, you need bees to do their thing. So you need bees flying into them and flying around and cross-pollinating them for them to become pumpkins. So that's the bit I got obsessed about. Because I'm online looking at, what if I can't get any bees to come and do this? And they're like, well, you can take a Q-tip and you can do it yourself. So I'm cross-pollinating orchids with Q-tips. That's how bad it got from me. But then these orchids die. You got these beautiful orchids for like a week, they die, and then they just become the ugliest goddamn plant. They become this nasty, dusty vine. And then it just and that's what you're left with. And then your pumpkins come up, and it was bad. I just became obsessed.
See, Scott, I wouldn't have said it was that bad unless you actually dressed in a bee outfit when you were doing.
I wasn't far off. If I'd have thought it would work, I'd have done it.
Now, that I would have paid real money to have seen a picture of.
Fuck, I would have paid to see that, dude.
If somebody suggested it, I'd have gone, all right, sweet, let's get here. I'd have done it. That's how bad it got.
Don't try to beat my short.
I'll tell you another one that we did is we did squash this year and cucumbers.
Mhm.
And I know what you're talking about the orchid like flowers, because you get the same kind of yellow. They're not big, but you get the same kind of yellow flowers out of cucumber plants and squash. And we got about a half a dozen cucumbers out of it, and that wasn't bad considering that the slugs were all over the damn place. And yeah, this next year it's going to be a war, absolute war on them little nasty critters. So, but hopefully we'll have more of the lot cleared next door and get started over there.
But yeah, it's just part of Halloween. I love, man. I love carving pumpkins with the kids. We do the whole house. So when it comes to, we're the only house in the street that has the decorations out, but we're like, you know what, we're embracing it. And even the year of COVID, we knew some kids were gonna risk it, right? So for our kids, we were like, we're skipping trick or treating this year, which sucks because you don't get many. As a kid, right. You get what? Realistically, you get 7 Halloweens to trick or treat when you're old enough to kind of enjoy it. 7, 6 if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So it sucked that all these kids had to miss one. We knew some kids were going to go out and do it, but I'm like, I'm not answering the door to a bunch of kids that are going to be all COVIDed up. So what we did on the off chance, and we did get some, we bought a remote control tarantula, and we attached a pot to the back of it, filled it with candy, and with an instruction on the door. It's like knock and back up 10 feet. So if kids wanted something, knock the door, they'd back up, and we'd literally drive the tarantula right to the units. They could get it. We'd bring it back, so we wouldn't have to break the.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
they've been making like chutes here out of like big 6-inch PVC pipe, and they run it down the banister on the stairs.
It's a brilliant idea.
So that at the top of the stairs, dropping the candy down the chute.
Oh, that's messed up.
Right?
Stick the candy in a blowgun. Got it.
Yeah, no, I love it, man. I love seeing it's just a great time of the year. The kids are all happy and stuff. Yeah. I mean, what a joyous thing! It's like just go get a big bag of candy. I mean, it's harmless, it's innocent fun, and long may it rain.
Yeah, Misty had one year set up a bowl out on the front porch, kind of like what you were talking about with tarantula, but it had a hand attached to the back of the bowl, and the bowl was full of candy. As soon as it was motion activated. So as soon as a kid reached in to grab on, the hand would come down. Oh man, that was a lot of fun. Except we ended up with candy all over the porch. So every time they pull back, so but that was a lot of fun.
Another thing that we don't have here, we don't do here is like, I know in America I'm assuming Canada's the same. On Halloween night, if you're staying in, there's probably a lot of horror movies and stuff on TV.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Over here, no. You can like you wouldn't even know it was Halloween. They're like, nothing is on, and you're like, well, yeah, you have to go digging to find stuff. And I think part of it is we're limited again. They probably don't see the appeal, but another reason of it is an incident happened back in 1992 with a Halloween show that is legendary in the UK, but it caused mass hysteria. I mean, it was like it caused major trouble. There was a show broadcast over here called Ghostwatch, and I was 13 when it broadcast, and I watched it with my brother. We were waiting for some horror movies to start. I think Halloween was like either on a Friday or Saturday night this year. So the TV stations kind of embraced it. And they were embracing Halloween more and more. But since this incident, not so much. So this show was called Ghostwatch. And what it was going to be an investigation to see if they could find a ghost. And it was broadcast live. And we're going to go to this house and we're going to see if there is paranormal phenomena. And it was a family of 3. It was a mother and 2 children that claimed that they were being haunted by a ghost that the kids had nicknamed Pipes. And the reason why they'd nicknamed him Pipes is because they said this ghost bangs the pipes, and when he does, they'd say, "Oh, it's just the pipes. Just ignore it." So the ghost became known as Pipes. So they had a studio set up where they had there was a guy called Michael Parkinson who was a very respected talk show host over here. It wasn't not like Jerry Springer. He was like very proper. he was in the studio doing his bit, and then they cut to, there was a popular presenter at the time who was presenting from the house. And I don't know if you've ever seen the show Red Dwarf, but the guy from that was in it as well. And nothing happened. So this show's on for an hour and a half, and nothing happens for the first 45 minutes. Nothing. And you're thinking, okay, they're not going to find anything. And then there's a scene where they're in the bedroom, and the camera pans past as they're leaving the room, and you see someone standing in front of the curtains. And when the camera pans back, he's gone. And I remember looking at my brother going, "Did you just see that?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Okay." And it just descends, right? It gets worse and worse and worse, where more and more is happening. Anyway, it all accumulates in the lights all blow, everything, and the presenter gets dragged into this cupboard under the stairs by this thing, and it cuts back to the studio, and the one of the experts says, "You've just created a giant seance," and it just turns into pure horror at this point. Now, this was broadcast as live. There was a phone-in number, and it was on the BBC, which again is a respected channel, and it created mass panic. They got over 1 million complaints. They had to get the presenters of the show on TV the next day on kids programs to say, "Kids, we're fine. Nothing happened to us. It was all just a big misunderstanding." It was like, shit. But it never broadcast again. But it was massive. And anyone of my kind of generation knows, you say that to them, they go, "Oh my God." And it scared the hell out of everybody. It absolutely terrified the nation. And since then, they've not really done any Halloween stuff. But yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, Ghostwatch, it was called. It scared the shit out of an entire generation. But my God, it was good. It was so good. Best Halloween ever. Yes,
right?
Since that, but you'd never get away with it now. You'd never get away with it now. If you pulled a prank like that on national television,
yeah,
it was bad. It was really bad, but it was amazingly funny.
That's like the Orson Welles War of the Worlds broadcast.
It gets likened to that. It gets likened to that. But that was, it was 30 years ago. This Halloween they did it, and it gets likened to that a lot. And I think what happened is they've been testing the waters. So there was a magician over here called Paul Daniels that used to have a family magic show. And the year before this, he did a Halloween magic show, which was a little darker. So some of the tricks were a little creepier. It was all set in a castle. And his final thing was he was going to escape from an Iron Maiden. So they were going to chain him up. Now, this Iron Maiden filled with spikes, where if he didn't get out in time, this thing was going to slam and kill him. And the instructions were given, should anything go wrong, we'll lead everybody out this door. And it does. This thing ends up slamming and killing him. And then so the screen just fades to black, and there's no sort of like, there's no music, nothing like that, no ending sequence, and then it panned out, and he sat on top of the castle laughing, and he said, "Ha, happy Halloween." It was like all a big joke. And I think they tested the waters with that, and then thought, right, now let's really push it the following year. And it's like, you went too far. You went way too far. Yeah, it was bad, but anyone that saw it remembers it fondly because it scared the crap out of a generation. It really did.
Damn. Sounds like the Keanu Reeves thing. Yo, we went too far.
We
broke all the rules.
But since then, I swear to God, it'll be on Halloween night. I will go through. I'm like, how about 900 channels? And not one of these channels is showing a Halloween movie. There's like 15 Halloween movies, and you ain't showing one of them. And it's
I got to tell you, we have a tradition that may be coming to an end this year. Finally, we have what's called Friday the 13th, the end. And supposedly where Jason finally dies.
It's Halloween ends.
It was Halloween, Halloween
franchise.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Haven't they killed him? But they've killed him like 9
Michael
times.
Myers, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they've killed Jamie Lee Curtis 3 times, twice on camera, once off camera.
Jason Voorhees lost my attention when he went to space. That was just
yeah.
What the fuck was that? I don't even know what I was watching, but yeah, but Michael Myers is cool.
I'm waiting to see Jason versus Alien, or Jason versus Predator.
Jason versus Predator.
You'll know Hollywood has totally lost their damn mind when you see that.
Yeah. I mean, the Halloween movies have become like choose your own adventure books at this time. The timeline makes absolutely zero goddamn sense.
Right.
If you start at Halloween 1979 and you want to watch the new ones, you have to forget every movie they made between 1980 and like 2018. You have to ignore all of them. And it's like, right, because it gets weird. So like in the second one, they kill him in the second one. He dies. Him and Dr. Loomis die at the end of the second one. The second one's set literally 5 minutes after the first one ends. So the second Halloween movie is set on the same night and it's set in a hospital that they've taken Jamie Lee Curtis to. And he goes to kill her and she finds out it's her brother and Loomis kills him. So he dies. And Halloween 3 has got nothing to do with any of them. It's about masks. Halloween 3 is weird. Yeah, they're masks that explode when you put them on. It's the weirdest thing. He's not in it, so Michael Myers isn't in Halloween 3 at all. So that one just lifts out completely. Then you got Halloween 4, where Jamie Lee Curtis's character has died off camera. And Halloween 5 is a continuation. Then Halloween H2O, where Jamie Lee Curtis is back from the dead. Yep. And she cuts his head off at the end. And you're like, right, well, he's dead. She just cut his head off his shoulder. She
cut his fucking head off, right?
And then when the next one starts, I was like, I went to the cinema to watch the next one. I don't know why. Halloween Resurrection. And literally, as they explained how his head got back on his shoulders, I was like, cough. It was
no way.
There's a scene where he gets knocked over a balcony. And they said that when he lands, he grabbed a security guard, put his mask on the security guard, and left. So she actually cuts the head off some random security guard, not him. I'm like, come on.
There's no way.
There's no way.
He's not coming back from that.
And he kills her in that one. He kills Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween Resurrection. And then, I'm not joking, go watch it. Busta Rhymes fly kicks him into an electric fence and calls him a bitch. That happens in Halloween Resurrection.
Oh my God.
I've seen all the Halloweens. It's some of that.
That's crazy.
There's like 13 movies of them. So
yeah,
it's like Freddy Krueger. They burned him. They fucking shot him. They blew him up. They fucking God knows what else they did, and he still keeps coming back for more.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Jason. It's like Jason. That Jason goes to Hell the Final Friday. They fucking blew him up. How the fuck can you come back from that?
I'm here for the booze and the screams also right now. What's up, buddy?
I mean, I don't give a fuck how fucking psychotic you are. If some fucking female FBI agent
throws a grenade at you,
there's a fucking somersault in the middle of the woods, and there's a bunch of fucking FBI fucking SWAT team members waiting in the wings in fucking camouflage in the middle of the night, and they see fucking Jason, and they see me, and I get blown up. I'm fucking dead.
Right?
It's too funny.
There ain't no fucking way I'm coming. How can I get my body parts back? I ain't no fucking Mr. fucking Potato Head, man.
Are you talking about Jason?
Yeah, this is Jason. The weirdest thing about that one is at the start of part 9, they don't even explain how he's back in the woods, because part 8 ends with him being melted in the sewers in New York with toxic waste.
I mean, the only thing that made sense in the APPR, the only thing that made sense in the Jason movie was how they told how Jason can catch up to his victims. Now there's tunnels underneath Crystal Lake.
PPR, what's up, buddy?
Okay. So that's how we're doing it.
But then again, I laugh at that because I'm like, really, it's kind of like the fucking action movies where the guy has a never-ending pack of cigarettes and he's always fucking smoking. Like, you're gonna tell me you have an infinite amount of fucking cigarettes in a fucking pack?
Well, it was like the show 24. You never saw Jack Bauer go for a piss. I mean,
or it's like those 3 hour, or it's like those fucking 1 hour shootouts in action movies. No shootout lasts 1 hour.
No.
And you get the guy that's been shot fucking 5 times going, oh. Wait a minute, let me tell you something. Tell my family I love them. Then he keeps fucking talking as he's fucking lying there. Die, motherfucker, die.
Shit. Oh, man.
Like Jason in Space.
Jason in Space.
Yeah, that was dumb.
Like,
Jason
really?
X.
Like, you know what? The only horror I'm a big horror movie fanatic. I love my horror movies.
Me too.
But the only horror movies that I think are worthwhile watching for me are the Hellraiser movies.
I'll see. I'm not a fan, man.
What?
I'm not a fan. We
can't be fucking friends in both.
No, we don't share that passion, man. I'm not a fan.
How can you not be a fan of Pinhead? How can you not be a fan of Pinhead, the Cenobites, and the Lament configuration?
I'm just not, man. I'm kind of, I don't know. I've always had kind of a soft spot for the Halloween and Friday the 13th movies, man. They're dumb.
Me too.
But I want to see babysitters get backed up. That's my thing. I kind of like some guy in a mask. That'll do. That's me home. I'd say my favorite Halloween movie. If you've never seen it, Trick or Treat. There's a movie called Trick or Treat.
I've seen it.
Love that movie because it's a Halloween movie about Halloween, right? As opposed to a horror movie that just happens to happen at Halloween. It's about Halloween.
I have a question for you guys in the chat. What did you guys think of? Okay, now this is a two-part question. One, what did you guys think of the Nightmare on Elm Street, the movie within the movie where Wes Craven shows up and they start having night dreams of Freddy Krueger because
I liked it.
You did?
I liked it. It's something different. I liked it. I think when you've made 6 movies up to that point, if you're going to make a 7th one, you got to do something different. You can't just keep here's more of the same.
You like that? So you like that? So you like Wes Craven's idea of a movie within a movie?
Yeah, it was different. It was. I mean, I didn't love it by any means, but I didn't think it was bad. It's one of those things where if you can't keep doing the same shtick, it couldn't just be more of the same. When you've done it 6 times before that, to do something different, I quite liked it.
Now, what did you guys think of the Nightmare on Elm Street movie with Haley, the guy that played on the Watch?
Hated it. Hated it. Terrible.
So you want to talk about traditional Halloween horror movies? You got to go back to Phantasm.
Phantasm. Yeah, I'm going to Phantasm. The ball, right?
Yeah. The
ball.
For the longest time, sitting on my desk at work, I don't even remember where I got it, but somebody gave me a ball bearing.
Nice.
It was about yay big, and I took a little square of wood and chewed out underneath it, dug out underneath it, so it would sit there on my desk.
DPR.
That was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. So
I didn't mind Phantasm. I mean, that guy was fucking creepy as fuck.
Yeah. And then the one that actually Misty and I watched most of, we got up to Paranormal Activity 4.
Oh.
And at Paranormal Activity 4, I forget what scene it was, but there was one scene where we both just kind of looked at each other and went, "Okay, that's it, we're done."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't even remember, but it hit us both the same way. We went, "Yeah, no,
That became the worst thing about those movies. They became annualized horror movies. So every year there'll be a sequel to it, and it started with Saw. So there was a Saw movie every year in October, and then when Paranormal Activity beat Saw to the #1 spot, they then just went, right, we're just doing that then. So you just got loads. I loved the first one, the first Paranormal Activity movie. I thought was great. And then they just dip, don't they? They just absolutely dip.
Right.
Yep.
And sometimes I think a lot of these movies would stand up as classics if they just one and done. If they never made loads of sequels to them, they'd stand as kind of all-time classics. Like Saw, the original Saw movie, if they hadn't have churned out like 9 sequels to it, and it just ended with that one movie, I think people would still talk about that movie like one of the greatest movies ever made, because it's got a hell of an ending. It's a really clever twist. No one's expecting the dude to get up off the floor.
No.
And it's if that had been it, if it just ended, he wins, that's it, end of film, you'd be like, Jesus.
Yeah.
It would be regarded as a classic. And maybe history will be kind to him, because it happened with Jaws. For the longest time, Jaws was seen as a joke because they made all those terrible sequels. People forgot how good the first one was, because all you remember is the god-awful sequels. And it takes a long time to shake those off. And you just remember, Jaws was a classic. Let's forget about 2, 3, and 4. And hopefully it happens with some of those movies.
Now, you guys got to admit, even though some of these, and I agree with what Doris says, some of these scary movies are cheesy.
Yeah.
But you guys got to admit something though.
Like Hostel.
Chucky and Freddy have some awesome one-liners.
Yeah. I think.
yeah.
See,
As far as movie quotes, dude, yeah, there are not too many of the horror movies that you don't get some kind of a quote out of that people take on.
Even with the first appearance of Chucky in Child's Play, you don't see him. I mean, it's literally until like the last 30 minutes you think it's the kid doing it. Is the way it's made out. They make out that it's the kid doing it and he's possessed by the doll. So
I think the director of the first Chucky kind of took that from the first Halloween, because in all my years of watching horror movies, if you remember, or no, not the first Halloween. Wait, what the fuck am I thinking? Because Rob Zombie came out with the last Halloween where he fucking. Never mind. Don't listen to me.
What's said about Child's Play is again, it's genuinely creepy. And I mean, it's like the scene at the end where they shoot him and the cop says to his friend, "Now do you believe me?" He says, "Yeah, I believe you, but who's going to believe me?" It's the whole thing. It's like no one's ever going to believe this shit happened. And he's not making wisecracks and shit like that through it. That happens later on. So as they make those sequels, all of a sudden it becomes very slapstick and kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's genuinely fucking horrifying when she turns him around to check his batteries and they're not in there and the head spins around and looks at her. You're like, oh shit, it's a genuine moment. But now it's just it's him wisecracking all the way through and you're thinking, okay.
There's a what could have been a franchise that Scott talking about classics because they didn't redo anything when they did The Shining. The way they left The Shining with him just sitting there in the maze, frozen in the snow.
Yeah. You
could have leapt into a sequel on that very easily, but they didn't, and because of that, that is one of your more epic horror movies of all times. And other movies have sampled from that so many times.
Yeah, absolutely. They did release a sequel to The Shining, I think a couple of years ago, Dr. Sleep. Which is really good. If you've not seen it, it's really, really good. It's about the Dr. Sleep.
Dr. Sleep.
Yeah. It's about the adult Danny Torrance. So the little boy from the Overlook Hotel is now an adult.
Right, Doris? I agree. Give me a good vampire versus werewolf movie.
But yeah, Dr. Sleep, if you get a chance to see it, it's strong. There's some really strong scenes in it, but it's a great movie. It's really good.
See, I like the Shining movie. I really do. But did you guys know this? Stephen King did not like the way Stanley Kubrick
did.
Yeah,
he hated it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because the ending's completely different. The ending of the book, The Shining, and the ending, the furnace blows up and destroys the hotel. That's how Jack Torrance dies in the book. There's a lot more Shining in it as well. I mean, in the movie, there's like 2 scenes with Scatman Carruthers Shining with Danny Torrance, whereas in the book, it's throughout it, which kind of makes sense why it's called The Shining.
And back to Chucky for a minute. I'm sorry, but if I saw a little dog coming after me, I'd punt that little bastard. I would.
That's what CJ says. He's absolutely terrified of the dolls. I keep teasing him. I'm going to get him a Chucky doll for his birthday and put it in front of his bed, one of them animated ones.
Now, what did you guys think? Now we're talking about horror movies. Talking about horror movies and characters of horror movies, which we have been talking about. What did you guys now? The 1990s It versus the new It. What did you guys think of that?
I like old school. I don't like the big eyes on the new one. Although Mark Hamill's an amazing voice actor, but still, it wasn't the same Chucky.
No, it's the.
That's another series that got stupid over time. Like he had a kid at the end there, and now it's this new one. Whatever.
No, Chris, we're talking about It, the clown.
Oh,
Pennywise.
Pennywise is CJ's favorite movie.
Like, I'm asking what you guys think of the 1990s It versus this new It they did.
I liked both. I think they're very different. I preferred the ending of the new one to the ending of the original. But For me, I mean, it's like, for some background. I was obsessed with Stephen King books from a very early age, so I read it before I watched it, and it's wildly different. There's a scene in it. I'm not going to go into it on here because we'll get citation. There's a scene in the book that they've never put in either of the films, which makes perfect sense if you read it in the book, but if you put it in a film, it is too dodgy. Without that scene in it, the story loses something completely, which is, it's weird, but it's what makes those kids kind of bond, and it's a really strange. If I tried to explain it, it wouldn't make sense, but it's not in the movies. That's missing. And then they put other things in. I think in the first the one from the 90s, that was a TV movie, so they were limited on what they could do and what they could show. And then in the one at the cinemas, I think because they weren't limited, they then relied a bit more on gore.
I mean that.
Then hurt it.
Yeah, and that actually it brings up a really good point, Scott. What makes a really good horror movie nowadays? Used to be it was just suspense. Then we got into gore.
Gore doesn't. I don't think gore scares anyone. That's the thing. I don't think gore elicits the same reaction as fear.
No.
So if you look at tension is what's scary. You know, when you know something's about to happen and they're ratcheting it up, and you're thinking any minute, that's scary. Watching someone tied to a chair having their limbs chopped off ain't scary. It's just gore. It's just gross. It's
right, thank you, Jason. I just saw your message backstage there. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'll tone it down a bit.
But the gore is not. I don't think it's necessary sometimes, but I don't think it's.
Yeah.
We went through what was essentially torture porn for a while. I think Hostel sort of popularized it, where it was literally someone tied up just being mutilated. This ain't scary. This is just kind of vile. This is stomach churning.
I got to tell you guys something. Talking about this is right. The 1922 silent movie Nosferatu and Dracula with Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They were good classics.
They were. I mean, for the time as well, they were terrifying. I mean, there were people passing out in the aisles when they saw Boris Karloff as Frankenstein. It's different time, different era. But we don't scare so easy.
Sure.
But
I'll give you a great example. You look at a movie now called Salem's Lot.
That
was released back in the 70s.
I like that movie.
I watched that last week. I genuinely watched Salem's Lot last week.
Yep. And to us now it's nothing, but I'm going to tell you what, to a young boy stuck in a hospital bed, watching this that couldn't get up, stuck watching this, watching his brother go to the window of his hospital room, open the window up, the smoke come in, the fog come in, and his brother come woofing in and then settle down and bite him. Yeah, I'm going to tell you what, at the time, that left a little bit of an impression.
Yeah.
Nowadays, not so much of a thing. But back then, on a 6-year-old kid, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll stay with you.
Welcome to, if you'd have stuck a lump of coal up my ass, you'd have gotten a diamond.
Coal up my ass.
Going back to the Michael Myers Halloween movie, I mean, that's a good example of one that there's not really any gore in it. Genuinely, there's not. I mean, if you go back and watch it, the original 1978, I think it was, not really. I mean, you see him kill people, but there's certainly not blood spurting out of people and going everywhere. But that shit's terrifying. I mean, the scene where she thinks she's killed him, and he's in the background, and he sits up like the Undertaker and turns his head and looks over, horrified, right? It's really scary. But that, I mean, again, Halloween is regarded as kind of the first one of its type, its first sort of slasher movie. Well, it wasn't. There was a movie that came out a couple of years earlier that's a lot scarier that no one's really seen called Black Christmas. That was directed by the same guy that, funnily enough, directed A Christmas Story.
Oh shit!
Same guy. He directed a movie called Black Christmas. Now they've remade it a couple of times, and the remakes are terrible. But the original Black Christmas is horrifying, And it is about it starts off in the same way as Halloween does. So you can see Halloween plagiarized it. You see through the eyes of kind of the killer, and you see him climb the outside of a sorority house, and he hides up in the attic. And he starts phoning them from upstairs. So he's calling the downstairs phone from upstairs. And it never really makes any sense. He says very strange things, and it's really creepy. But you never see him. That's kind of what's scary about it. And you see bits of him. So there's a scene where the one girl, the cops phone her and say, you need to leave the house. The calls are coming from inside the house when they finally trace the call. And she's calling upstairs to a friend, and they're saying, just leave the house. But she goes up to see if her friend's who is. But there's a scene she enters the bedroom. All you see is through the crack of the door, you just see his eye looking at her. And it's horrifying. She runs down, and from off camera, you see his hand come from off camera and grab her hair. But you never see him. And you never know why he did it. It's horrendous. So he's got no motive for doing it. It's just horrible. It's so bleak, but it is a terrifying movie. Black Christmas. Yeah, see that one. If that don't make your skin crawlers on too tight.
I'll give you a movie. Jason just made me think of something. To us now, this movie is a nothing because we're all adults. You know, we can handle it, but if you were a kid, a teenage boy in the 70s, or a religious zealot in the 70s who went to go see this movie, people were actually passing out and running out of theaters.
Yeah.
The Exorcist.
Yeah, The Exorcist is.
I was just going to talk about that one. Yeah.
There's something weird about that movie. There's something really uncomfortable about watching that movie. I don't know what it is.
Why? Because it can happen. It's possible.
Well, you could say the same thing. You could say the same thing about Damien. That's another one of those. You know, that one always left me uncomfortable.
You know what? The Exorcist was banned in the UK for years. Right, you couldn't see it here. So shortly after it was released in '75, I think it was banned. You couldn't see it. You couldn't watch it. And because this is a whole other topic, but we had what was known as the Video Nasty Act happened in the 1980s, where they banned pretty much everything. So you name it, they ban it, right? So Evil Dead was banned, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Driller Killer, Maniac, most of the zombie movies, pretty much every single film Dario Argento made, all of them were banned. Last House on the Left, all of them. Damn. And it was what happened was we had there was a woman here who she's kind of unbelievable that this happened. There was a woman called Mary Whitehouse who was kind of as Middle England gets. She was very prim and proper, and you know this old bag that would be morally outraged by everything. So when videos were released over here, she got on her high horse about the fact that now, for the first time, kids had access to horror movies, which they did because the kids couldn't get into the cinema to see one. But now, if there was one in the home, there's a chance they could see it. So she got on this moral outrage and decided we need to ban all these movies. So anything that had, it was the title they were banning for. Most of these movies they didn't watch them. They looked at the title and banned it. So like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that's got to go. Evil Dead, that's got to go. So this is so for the longest time, these movies just you couldn't see them. So they were all banned. So movies that banned Texas Chainsaw Massacre was banned, Driller Killer, Maniac, Last House on the Left, Evil Dead 2 for a very small period of time was banned. The Exorcist was banned. Clockwork Orange was banned. And it wasn't until 1997 The Exorcist was released here. So I first saw The Exorcist when I was 19. I went to watch The Exorcist and something really weird happened, right? So I went to the movies to watch The Exorcist. Freaked me out. I walked home from the movies. This is so weird. Right?
I know where you're going with this. Oh no!
This was just weird. Right? So I'm kind of walking home on my own. It's nighttime, and it was kind of a creepy kind of. That was a weird movie. And it's messing with me on the way home. And I walk down the one street. And I turn into my street. And as I do, for no reason,
horrible.
All the street lights at the same time. Power cut. Every street light. I did pitch black at this point. I'm like, that's
Oh no.
weird. Right, and I'm like, okay, so I kind of freaked out a little bit. Let's stop. I think, you know what, I don't like cigarette. Right, so I lit a cigarette. I started over the corner. Then when all the lights come back on, there's a fox sitting in front of me looking at me. Right, I'm like, this is so weird. I've never seen this world. Like, this is freaking me out. I gotta go. It's too strange. Realize that happened. That was the exercise. This is just weird. Yeah, it was freaky.
Now, if the fox had spoken to you, that would have been the end of it.
Yeah, it was a really trippy night. But yeah, just to watch all these street lamps like one by one after watching that movie, like they just cast the darkness. It was like this is so weird.
I just see Scott now. Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore.
I was so I was freaked out anyway, and that just didn't help. I was like, that's so strange. But yeah, that's completely true. So most of those movies weren't released here again until the late 90s, early 90s. So now they all are. You can see all of them. But Chainsaw Massacre was like one of the most pirated movies. So everyone had seen it, but you'd all watched it on some like third or fourth generation pirate video.
Yeah.
And it made it scarier. Right? Because you were watching this kind of grainy shit pirate copy. It made it scary. Because if you watch Chainsaw Massacre now in like HD, it don't look great. And you're like, yeah. But when you're watching it on that old VHS copy, I don't know, it just made it feel dirtier. It made it feel kind of raw. And yeah, it's a fucking movie, Chainsaw Massacre. That's an odd movie. Incredibly like on chainsaw killings as well. Only one person actually gets killed with a chainsaw in Chainsaw Massacre. So it's more the Texas Chainsaw Incident than Massacre.
I don't think you'd get the same.
That's got the same ring to it.
Yeah, no.
No.
You know, that would be like the difference between saying the Waco massacre and the Waco incident. You know.
Yeah. So it's a weird one. So we have this moral outrage over horror movies.
And actually, Doris has a good question. Are vampires and werewolves based in London or Transylvania?
Right. So what I can tell you is modern vampire lore comes from America. You had Stake Through the Heart and all that before Bram Stoker's book was published. That came from America, and I can tell you where it came from as well. You had the I believe it was New Jersey Vampire Panic, which happened in, I think it's around about 1890, 1885, where a lot of people were convinced that New England maybe were convinced that vampires were responsible for the deaths of families, killing whole families. And I can tell you the story of the last American vampire. They believed that entire families were going down with a mystery illness, and they were being drained of their life energy, and they were fading away. They were becoming weak and they were becoming born. But we now know what they had was consumption, which is now known as tuberculosis. So it was going through entire families, and no one knew what it was. They very little was known about consumption at the time. All they knew is if you had it, it was a death sentence. You were going to die. But they believed that going through families, that maybe they were cursed. Maybe one person in the family was responsible, and they believed that maybe one of the family was a vampire, and they would take out the rest of the family. So there was an incident of the Brown family. So the Brown family got consumption, and the mother died first, closely followed by the two daughters. And one of the daughters was called Mercy Brown. She was 19 years old. And then Edward Brown came down with consumption. He was wasting away, and they convinced the father that one of his dead was cursed and was coming in draining Edward of his life. So they exhumed the graves with his permission. They exhumed the graves of the three Brown girls. The mother showed decomposition. She was, done. The eldest daughter, same thing. But Mercy Brown, who'd been in the ground for 2 months at this point, was immaculate. She'd had no decomposition at all. It looked like she'd literally just died. She was lying on her side, and when they poked her, blood came out of her mouth, which means blood was still in her heart, which isn't normal for somebody who's been dead for 3 months. So they were convinced that Mercy Brown was a vampire and she was rising from the grave at night to feast on Edward. So what they did was they destroyed Mercy's body. So they removed Mercy's heart, and on a rock they pierced it and burned it. And they also destroyed liver and the kidneys. And with the ashes of this, they mixed it together and they made a tonic, which they gave to Edward to drink, which they believe would cure him of the illness. It didn't. Edward died like 2 weeks later. But Mercy Brown was known as the last American vampire because what actually happened with Mercy was this was the dead of winter when this happened, and she'd been kept in a tomb for 2 weeks prior to being buried. So she was essentially frozen. I mean, we're talking sub-zero temperatures. So Mercy had been perfectly preserved. She'd been frozen. So when they dug her up, she wouldn't have decomposed because she was frozen solid. But by the time they dug her up, she'd started to thaw and was starting to decompose. So that's why she was a vampire, not because she was a vampire.
There it goes.
They basically stored her in a freezer for 2 weeks.
Scott,
Right in StreamYard right now.
Scott, did you tell them how the legend of the vampire actually came about? Like I know, but did you? But I'm sure you know, and I'm sure Jason knows. But did you tell?
We were talking about Vlad before, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
he was a ruthless dictator, man.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mercy Brown is regarded as the last American vampire because after this incident happened, they discovered more about consumption and its tuberculosis and how to cure it. And everyone was
Break it
a
up, Scotty.
the fact they've been digging up corpses and staking them, and you know, it's what happened. There was a lot of instances of these. There was a lot of instances of digging up bodies, and Mercy Brown's the last one, which is why she's known as the last American vampire. To do it. But some modern vampire law of destroying the heart of the pale white skin, it comes from America, it comes from those incidents, believe it or not. And then Bram Stoker took those things and put it in his book that's released 5 years later. And there you have it. So modern vampire lore and mythology comes from America.
Interesting.
Wow.
We're guilty. Hello, Cheesecake.
Hey, Cheesecake. And do you guys remember the movie The Serpent and the Rainbow?
Yeah.
You know that is based on an actual person that was supposedly dead, but ended up walking. People actually saw this person walking through their Haitian town.
It happens. I mean, when it comes to voodoo and zombies, there is a lot of kind of background where it comes from. It was basically animated. They weren't animated corpses. It was animated coma patients, basically. You can still do it now. I mean, there was a movie called Awakenings where they have Robin Williams in it, where they were waking up people that had been comatose for a long time by stimulating them with certain medications. You could do it. You could put them in comatose and walk around like a zombie. I mean,
Yeah.
Jeffrey Dahmer did it. Jeffrey Dahmer did it.
You're talking the movie
People made
Awakenings, right?
Yeah. So I mean, you can up the medication to dangerous levels, which will animate them, ultimately will kill them. But it's and that's what's happened with a lot of Haitian voodoo, where it's like, well, the zombies, like, you lobotomize them. You've got skewer through their heads, so they are walking around like they're alive, but they're brain dead. And that's it's a horrible thing. But most of all of these things, everything is based in reality.
Yeah.
It gets
Scott,
it gets
you're breaking up again. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. We're getting like every third word.
I'm going to charge and reboot.
On a what?
I'll be right back. I'm going to charge.
Okay, no worries.
Be right back.
Yep. One of the other interesting ones talking about going to religious stuff is the movie Stigmata.
Yeah.
Which is
Stigmata was all right.
Yeah, which is another one of those dramatic ones, as opposed to a one that's based on gore, although it's got its bloody parts.
Well, I do believe that Stigmata can happen only to the people that really truly.
All right, Doris. Happy Thanksgiving, hon.
Yeah, you too, Doris. But I mean, Padre Pio, he was a monk, and he woke up one morning and he had the wounds of Christ on his hands and his feet, and so yeah, I believe Stigmata.
Have a good rest.
And Stigmata, and he's not the only one that Stigmata has happened to.
And it's those ones where they base a part of the movie on real life that lends to the I think the more as Scott was putting it, the more tense of situations, you know, and makes, at least in my opinion, makes for a better movie.
Yeah, well, in my okay, going back to The Exorcist, that movie is loosely based on a true story, but instead of it being a young girl, it was a teenage boy in real life.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know why they had to change from a boy to a girl.
Hollywood. That's why a lot of the changes get made, man. People identify better. People identify better with young girls that get picked on like that, as opposed to the guys. You know, the guys are supposed to be, this is where they've set it up. The guys are supposed to be the strong ones that come in and save the situation. You know, whereas the girls are they turn. You know, Hollywood's always turned out to be a victim.
And for those of you that are curious whether or not I'm being truthful with the Exorcist movie, look up the name Roland Doe, ROLANDOE, and that is the teenage boy that was possessed by the devil demon. Roland Doe.
Well, shit. What's up, Mike?
Just like the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Do you know that the character Freddy Krueger is actually based on a 1800s child killer named Freddy Krueger?
Have heard. Don't know a whole lot about it, but I've heard.
Oh yeah, he was executed.
You know. Yep. So there's actually a lot of movies out there that are based on. Based on true stories. I mean, you go. I don't know if you necessarily call it a horror story, but the movie Zodiac. You know,
Zodiac,
based on the original Zodiac killer. The Amityville Horror, depending on who you talk to and what interviews you see, will tell you how much of it is a hoax and how much of it is real.
I could give you guys my opinion on that, but I don't know.
I can give you mine. You give me yours, I'll give you mine.
I do believe that a man killed his entire family in that house. That is documented. That is fact. I do believe there was some crazy, spooky stuff happening in that house when the Lutz family moved in. But as far as the oozing of the walls and whatnot, and the pig and whatnot, I think they just got used to selling the book rights, and they got used to making money, and they embellished a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Seems legit.
For clarity on my side, I'm a complete non-believer. I am a total skeptic. But when it comes to the Amityville House, I've been to the Amityville House. I've seen it. There's no, literally none of it. You put any of it under a magnifying glass, none of it adds up. Right, so the Warrens version of events is they mention the pig demon quite a lot, leaving footprints in the snow. You can check the meteorological reports around that time. There was no snow around that time, so immediately we know that's a fallacy. There was no one killed in the Lutz house. I know there's a report nobody was killed in the Lutz house. That no guy killed his whole family in the Amityville house. It didn't happen. There was a house close to it that happened, but it wasn't in the Lutz house. And I think the Warrens saw a way to cash in. So a lot of the Warrens versions of events are very different. The Warrens were like Uri Geller, basically. They were showmen. And they were very good at what they did, but no. I think if you scrutinize anything the Warrens say or did, it falls apart really quick. I'm not saying there isn't something out there. I'm just saying I don't believe the Warrens and never did.
No, I don't either. But there is documented fact that Ronald Butch DeFeo did kill his entire family in that house in the early 70s.
I'll be right back, guys.
Didn't happen. I mean, the people that live in the Amityville house now as well have said they've never seen or witnessed anything.
No, you're missing the point, Scott. There was Ronald Butch DeFeo did kill his entire family in that house in the early 70s.
Right, but that doesn't suddenly make the house haunted.
The DeFeos, they died in that house before the Lutz family moved in.
Okay.
Their son.
But that doesn't suddenly possess the entire house, does it? That's
no,
kind of my
I'm not saying that. No, I'm not. I'm just saying Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr. killed his mother, his father, his two brothers, and his two sisters in that house in 72, 73.
Okay. When did Amityville happen? 74, wasn't it?
The Lutz family moved in, I believe, in 73 or 74.
Right. So they bought a house, found out people had died in it, wanted to sell it, couldn't, fabricated a story. Suddenly the house is worth 10 times what it used to be.
Right, but there was a murder that happened, a horrible murder that happened in that house in the early 70s, though.
Okay. The Warrens appear in everything. So every kind of haunting that happens in the 70s after Amityville, the Warrens seem to get their hand in. So they were part of the Enfield Poltergeist, which happened in the UK. Which, again, the girls involved in the Enfield Poltergeist are now adults and have admitted the whole thing was a hoax.
Right.
Yet the Warrens will still, at the time, would still swear blind that they'd seen all these things. Well, the girls have admitted it was a hoax. So why are you still sticking to your guns that it wasn't? And it's because they sold books on it and still do. And
the Warrens had no idea about Amityville until the Lutz family started reporting hauntings in that house.
Yeah, the Warrens for me, no, I don't.
And I agree with you. The Warrens, I do agree with you, Scott. The Warrens, they're showmen. That's all they are. They're showmen.
Completely. It's like the Annabelle doll. It's just fucking nonsense. They've got the Annabelle doll locked up in a glass box. But it doesn't look like the one in the movies. It looks like a Raggedy Ann doll. So it's just a Raggedy Ann doll that's locked up in a case. Now, I believe where that came from is there was another incident with a doll called Robert. That you can go see him. He's in Florida.
I did my research on Robert the doll. Yeah.
Right. So that's a very weird story. But again, I think because the Warrens didn't have their own Robert, they invented an Annabelle. I think is what happened, and I think that's kind of what you see. You see these trends. So something happened at the time, and then the Warrens, if they couldn't get in on it, created their own version of it.
Well, yeah, Robert the doll is legit. I mean, you can't argue. Robert the doll is legit.
But again, I'm a skeptic, so I can't argue it. I don't believe it is. But it's it is a weird story. But yeah, it's
You guys talking about the haunted collector? So
you can. I mean, I believe that's what happened to the Warrens. So the Warrens never mentioned possessed dolls. Robert the doll becomes a news story. Then all of a sudden, the Warrens have got Annabelle the doll, and it's like, isn't that convenient? And it was always the same. Whenever a big story would hit, a supernatural story, suddenly the Warrens, if they couldn't get involved in it, had their own version of it. And that's why I don't believe a word that came out the Warrens' mouths. I just think, no.
I agree with you.
Yeah, they were complete showmen. They were, again, at the time, it was Uri Geller at the time was one. I mean, James Randi exposed Uri Geller live on television. Same thing. But Uri Geller still swears blind that he has psychic powers. It's like, well, you don't. You've been exposed so many times that you don't. And,
might be psychotic powers.
Well, I mean, what would happen was he did his whole, in the 70s, he was doing his whole shtick of going in and doing the spoon bending and things like that. And his, somebody would hold something up behind him, he could tell him what it was. And he was going to appear on, I believe it was Johnny Carson. And Johnny Carson, I think, was an amateur magician, and he was friends with a magician called James Randi. And James Randi said to him, if you've got Uri Geller coming on your show, this is what you do. And it's like, right, you don't let him bring his own props. If he's saying he can bend spoons, go out and buy some spoons, put them down in front of them and say, let's see you do it. These are spoons you haven't touched yet. Let's see you bend them. And he couldn't do it. So it was all of a sudden he's like, oh, my powers are weak tonight. They're like, oh, that's convenient. And it's what happened. But the FBI were fooled by people who claimed they had psychic powers. There was a guy that claimed he could move things with his mind. And he'd stand there with a book and he'd turn the pages over. And it was I think it was the CIA were doing an investigation into psychic powers. And he completely fooled them. And they had to get, again, it was James Randi who went, he's blowing the pages. That's what he's doing. He's just, you're watching the pages, you're not watching him. And he was literally blowing, exhaling, and making the pages turn over. And so James Randi had a thing where if you could prove any kind of psychic ability, he'd give you $1 million. And it wasn't that he was a skeptic, is that he wanted to see something, genuinely wanted to see something. If you can do it, I will give you $1 million. So a lot of people took him up on his challenge, and he'd say, right, okay, this is what you claim you can do. We're going to set up a test scenario to see if you can do it. Because he, as a magician himself, he'd go, okay, these look like magic tricks. These look like illusions. And they're like, so if we remove your ability to perform the illusion, can you still do it? And no one was ever able to claim the $1 million.
Well, the CIA has done a lot of experiments with psychic powers and the psyche, and just look at Timothy Leary. Just look at Wolfenhound. Just look at Timothy Leary and LSD. The CIA got the rights to that real quick.
Yeah. Yeah, they've all done weird stuff, and it's it is what it is. But they James Randi's $1 million challenge. No one's ever able to beat it.
Hey, Scott,
definitely not snoring.
Scott, I have a question to ask you.
You're nodding off, Chris.
Did you get my address?
I did, yeah. So it's going to the post the end of this month.
Okay, awesome.
So yeah, it's a strange one. The Warrens, I think, charlatans. There's that guy as well.
Yeah.
The guy from what was his name? Jonathan Edwards or something.
Yeah, Jonathan. The psychic. Yeah.
Yeah, don't believe a word of him either.
Just like Cynthia. No, not Cynthia. But what's her name? She was on Montel. She was on Montel Williams way back when.
Yeah, I'm convinced that woman that her daughter was dead.
Sylvia.
Yeah. Tell that woman her daughter was dead, and she was one that's been held hostage in that house. I don't know if you've ever seen that. She was on the Montel Williams show, and she told a woman in the crowd, your daughter was killed by, she got in with her boyfriend was a drug dealer, and he killed her, and her body was thrown in a dumpster, and he was driving a PT Cruiser, and she spins all this shit. The woman pretty much gave up at that point and died of what's commonly known as broken heart syndrome. And it was actually revealed that her daughter was one of those 3 girls that was held captive in that house for like 10 years.
Oh, shit.
And that's my issue with it. So when they say psychic mediums bring comfort to people, I'm like, yeah, not always. I'm like, sometimes it's quite damaging, and that was a good example of that.
Well, what do you mean? What do you mean you're not
welcome? What are you talking about?
You're welcome here, man. Fuck,
dude.
Sylvia Brown was legit. Let's go.
Jason, how is that coming with the Bluetooth?
It actually is going out on Tuesday. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually going out on Monday.
Okay, awesome.
Sorry, not Monday, Tuesday. Monday's a holiday.
Okay, awesome. Brother. Thank you so much.
Yes. It's kind of funny. Misty had all the other paperwork done up for customs, and yours was supposed to be in there. She got over to the post office and couldn't find your paperwork.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Ooh.
So, yep.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott, for mailing that. Thank you, Jason and Misty, for mailing that for me.
That's what I meant.
Absolutely, dude.
You guys are true friends. Wolf and Hound, you guys are true friends. Chris, Amanda, everyone here are true friends. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, man.
Oh, we love you guys. You good.
And Wolf and Hound, I never want to hear the question, am I no longer welcome here? You're always welcome here, brother.
Yeah.
I don't know where you would think you're not, but you're always welcome here, man.
Seriously, dude. Yeah. No doubt.
I didn't do it.
You say that one more time, I might just fucking sneak on a plane, go to where you live, and kick your butt.
Derek, you're not sneaking on a plane. He's across the border.
Oh, Wolf and Hound?
Yeah.
I'd have to.
He's not Canada, dude.
He ain't in Canada.
He's not in Canada.
No, but you're in Canada.
You are though.
Yeah, it means I'd have to fly to him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. You ain't sneaking if you got to go across the border. You
Yeah.
ain't sneaking
Unless you're
nowhere.
Are your
guess you
kids in
could-
school during Halloween? Is it term time in America? Because over here they're off school. during
No,
Halloween.
they're usually in school unless it's on a weekend.
Yeah.
Oh, you see, ours aren't.
yeah.
Ours are always
our
off. Ours
winter
are always
break-
at home during Halloween. They have this is so, I mean, again,
I'll be
this is
there,
one of
Wolf.
those things that our country's never addressed. We have all these weird breaks in the school year for like a week here and a week there, and it's all based on ancient farming things. So the reason why kids are off in October is so they could help parents harvest. And it's like, no kids in the UK help anyone harvest anymore. We've just always had this weird tradition that it's still going now. So our kids are always off the last week of October, first week of November,
Yeah.
still to this day,
Well,
so they could go and help people get farm potatoes.
For us,
Weird.
if I remember correctly, I think the break for us is right around Christmas time because most of the kids go back to school right at the beginning of September. So to take
Yeah,
a
see-
break in October is a little on the early side.
Well, this is the thing. Our kids are never at school for longer than 6 weeks. So 6 weeks is maybe
Yes,
7
that's
weeks
right.
is the longest
Yeah, you were
stretch they
talking
do.
about that before.
Yeah, that we don't have anywhere near as long a summer as you do. We have a really short summer break, but they have lots of breaks throughout the year. So they go back the first week of September. They're then off the last week of October. They go back and then they're off at Christmas. Then they go back and they're off again in, I think, February. It's constant. And as a parent, it's a pain in the ass because you've constantly got to try and arrange childcare for the whole year. And it's a nightmare. But
Awesome,
yeah.
awesome, Wolf. And I'll be sure to check your premiere out. And as far as
I was
you
saying,
got guns, that's great. Yeah. So
and Derek's a big target.
so
Well,
Scott,
have you guys dropped your Wolf and Out? Have you dropped your link? If not, let's get that dropped for you. For that, because I will be there with bells on to watch that
Yeah.
sucker.
yeah, Wolf and Hound. So will I, brother.
I'll make sure Misty's in there too, because that's something she keeps begging me to do is to go into some of the abandoned buildings. I'm like, no, not
Scott,
without
next
permission
year,
around here.
Scott, next year I'm going to the UK to check out a lot of your history and do some videos and do some investigations. Do a lot of them actually.
Mhm.
What I want to do,
There it is.
aside from going to some of your battlefields from the medieval days, I want to go to the moors where now nobody interrupt me. I'm trying to think. There was a husband and wife serial killer.
Myra Hindley and Ian Brady.
Yeah, they never found a boy yet.
Do you know what, Derek? Funnily enough, it looks like they found him literally this week.
Really?
Yeah, they found bone. I think they found a kneecap or something, and it looks like they might have found him. Keith Bennett, his name was, and it looks like they may have found him. They've been looking for him for 50 years,
Yep.
but
There
it
you
looks
go.
like they might have found him.
There you go, guys. That's Wolf and Hound's premiere for tonight link.
Does anyone know why they did that? Like, could they not have kids or?
No, it was it's a long story. It was him was the main driver behind it. He killed them. She recorded it. They believed they were more intelligent than the average person, and they believed this was kind of the height of intelligence. To be able to abduct and murder people was kind of the ultimate thrill. If you were dumb, your pleasures relied on what you were allowed to do. They believed that they were so intelligent they could do what they wanted. That's the basics of it. There's a lot more to it than that.
Well, and
But that's the basics of it.
every once in a while, there's a twisted sucker that does get away with stuff, because they're a little
Yeah,
bit
I mean,
smarter
they
than
they
science.
were pieces of shit. They really were, and it's sorry, I know we got to watch the language, but they were horrible people. I don't believe she died. He was in Broadmoor, which is a psychiatric prison for the duration of his time, and she was in a standard prison. And they claim she died, and I think about 10 years ago they claimed she died, but I don't believe she did. I think she was released and given a new identity. That's what I think. I don't believe she died.
Hopefully, a new face.
Well, yeah, I don't. The story that they released about her death just seemed a little bit too perfect. They said that she'd suffered from this disease and she was writhing in pain for like 3 days and then died. But there was this big campaign to free her for a long time because she never actually killed anybody, but she was certainly an accomplice to it, and she was certainly aided it. So I don't believe she died. I think they fabricated that story for the press, because I think if people had known that she'd been released, she'd have been dead within a day of being out. They were hated, absolutely hated here. But he'd never tell them where Keith Bennett was, so they never found him. And Keith Bennett's mother searched her whole life for him, and she sadly passed away about 5 years ago, never finding her son.
No bueno.
But
serial killers will often do that in hopes that if they hold back a body or whatever, they will be.
No, he did it for torment. He did it for. I mean, he could have told them and just chose not to. And that was a big thing of his. Like, I mean, he had his day in court about 6 years ago. He's dead now. But he had his day in court about 6 years ago when he was demanding that he be able to go on a hunger strike because he wanted to die. So he wanted to strike and go on a hunger strike. When he went to court, he was kind of humiliated quite a lot in there because the nurses said no one's ever forced him to eat anything. Like, if he wants to go on hunger strike, he can. Like, but he has a toaster in his room and he's regularly eating. He's not. If he wants to go on a hunger strike, he's not really trying. And it was this whole thing of he just refused to tell them where he was. Now there's a picture that they took of Myra Hindley crouched down in the moors looking at the ground, which they're fairly sure is where Keith Bennett was buried. But the moors all look the same. It doesn't matter. You could take a picture on the moors. No one could tell you where it was because it's the moors is vast. I mean, and
it looks all the same. It
all looks exactly the same. You couldn't tell from a picture where it is. It's an old black and white picture. You could not. There's no way you go, oh, that's there. But a guy that owns land, literally, this is funny you brought it up. Literally in the last week, I think it was Monday. It was in the press that they found what they believed to be human remains, and they're now exhuming the site to try and find Keith Bennett.
And there's a couple of other places I would love to do a history video on and an investigation. One is the Rams Inn, and the other one is the Maze Prison,
right,
where the hunger strikers.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Well, where I live, the buildings here are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old. We've got the cathedral here where they filmed Harry Potter.
Nice.
So if you ever see any scenes in the Harry Potter movies where the kids are walking around corridors, it was filmed in my hometown, the cathedral. What you won't know is the kids are walking on dead bodies. So all of those it's called the cloisters, where you walk around. It's basically a graveyard. So there are bodies buried in the floors. So it's that's a freaky place. That's really, there's a lot of old spooky places where I live, loads of them, because we have the Romans here as well, so they're constantly finding things as well, like old Roman baths and things like that buried.
Well, I mean, you guys have the history for it. So.
Yeah, we have loads of it. My town in particular was kind of a Roman stronghold, so you can kind of still see the way it was built. You can see it's like a cross and a gate and things like that, and where they would have come in and where they would have gone out of. But the prison here closed about 5 years ago, and for the first time they have full access to the prison. And this prison was from the Victorian era, so it's very old. But now they had enough time and space where they could start looking underneath it. And they think there's a castle under it. This is kind of the mad stuff that we find. They think the remnants of what was a castle at some point are underneath this prison. So they're looking to exhume the grounds there to see what they can find. But it's crazy. They do a lot of ghost hunts at the prison because, again, this prison is got to be a good 200 and something years old.
What
So
is
a
your
lot of
take, Scott? What is your take on the Ninth Legion that just up and disappeared from their post?
Vanished.
Huh?
Yeah. Well, they never found them. I mean, I know there's a lot. They believe witchcraft was involved with the Ninth Legion. Some people believe they were sacrificed. Others believe they were just the Scottish just did away with them. But there's never been any trace of them. That's the strangest thing.
Yeah.
That if it had just been locals that had taken them out, at some point you would have found armor or jewels, or because I mean centurions were decked out. I mean they were like glistening soldiers. You would at some point something would have appeared in the Ninth Legion. It never has. So no weapon, no armor, nothing. The Ninth Legion just vanished in Scotland. No one knows what happened to them.
Well,
but there was a lot of belief that witchcraft played a hand in the disappearance of the Ninth Legion. How true that is, I don't know. But I know.
No, go ahead, finish.
The Romans never successfully invaded Scotland. So they managed to take Wales and England, but they never successfully invaded Scotland, which is why we've got Hadrian's Wall. So any attempt the Romans made to settle in Scotland, the Scottish basically brutalized them out.
Yeah.
So it's not beyond the realms of belief that the Ninth Legion made it in and were just murdered as soon as they got in there. But again, the strange thing is there's no one's ever found anything, because you think as well they'd all be buried together. If they killed the Ninth Legion, there'd be some mass grave somewhere of Roman centurions, because you'd just pile them all in, wouldn't you? You wouldn't. But it's never been found.
Are you talking on English land, or are you talking on Scottish land?
Scottish.
Because on Scottish land, didn't some of the clans believe in burning their dead?
Yeah, but I don't think they give that honor to Roman centurions.
No, but would it be beyond belief to think that they might have either just piled them up and burned them as a mass pile, or left them for the carrion to come and get? In which case, if they left them for the buzzards, quote unquote,
possibly.
I don't think you would find anything. You get
it's more the armor. I think it's more the armor, and the none of that has surfaced, because we find that all the time. We're constantly finding Roman artifacts in the UK all the time. They find stashes of coins or blades, and any museum you go into in any town in England, they'll have Roman artifacts, because they're bloody everywhere. You just keep finding them. So they don't really. I mean, some, depending on what it is, some have huge monetary value, but most stuff doesn't, because there's so much of it. Because they were here for so long, and it's bloody everywhere that you just, you don't have it. There's a there's a body of a Roman centurion in our local museum. We've got a tiny museum. I mean, it's miniature. You can walk around it in 20 minutes, but we've got a dead Roman in there. So I mean, it's that common, this stuff. It's just everywhere.
And Jason, I'm not saying your theory is wrong with the funeral pyre, but there'd be bones, man. They'd have found bones.
Well, and
ran DNA, and they would have found out. Okay, well, this is the missing Ninth Legion.
You would think, but again, it kind of depends. You're talking about being a long, long time ago. And depending on what happened, the other question is could the bodies have been stripped? It was not an uncommon practice back in the day there for commoners to strip knights, if you will, and the Romans certainly would have had better armor than the commoner would have, and take along with them. So the question would be, has any of that ever turned up?
None of it. This is the strange thing about the Ninth Legion. Literally nothing has turned up in the Ninth Legion. So all of the centurions' armor was branded to their legion. So you know what legion they were from. And nothing has ever, not a thing has turned up. They've just vanished. It's the strangest thing.
Could they have walked?
They're just gone.
Could they have walked? Now, this is just hypothetical, but I'm a believer in the unexplained and whatnot. Could they have walked into some sort of portal?
I think what could have happened is they could have walked into a swamp. I think that's very possible. I think it's not unbelievable they could have walked into a bog or a swamp and wearing what was essentially 30 to 40 pounds of armor. Once you're in, you're in.
Yeah.
You know, you're gone. I think that's something that could have happened to them. But again, I don't know the full story behind it, but I know that there is a big thing about witchcraft in the Ninth Legion, that something happened to them, that they were sacrificed or something. I don't know the full story behind it though. But
oh shit!
Any Roman that went into Scotland came out pretty rapidly, and that's why there's Hadrian's Wall. So at some point, the Romans just gave up. They're like, you know what, we're not even going to bother. Any attempt to, because the Romans' version of an invasion was not like other invasions. A Roman invasion, basically, they came with stuff, you know. So it wasn't like they just took you over and brutalized you. They turned up and they built roads and they built irrigation and they built, you know. So it was kind of like sometimes you just let them, you know. It's like, you want to build all this stuff, yeah, you crack on. And that's what happened.
And Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the seas that are around Scotland, you know, in the most direct route from Scotland to England, some of those seas are pretty rough.
Oh, you'd be dead. I mean, like the North Sea, for example, I mean, is close to sub-zero. You wouldn't last very long in there.
So assuming that they didn't know about the seas per se, and you know, you've seen the Roman boats were not exactly the most sea-going things. They were better suited for rivers and barges and things like that. If they loaded it down with their stuff, what's possibility? You know, they ran into a storm and
another one as well that's never been addressed is that they went native, that they just quit the Roman army. They're like, you know what, let's stay here. Yeah. And I think that's where the witchcraft comes in. I think there's some people, they were enchanted by women. Maybe
that's not entirely. Scott, that's not entirely unbelievable, because if you look at the Knights Templars, and I know I'm going off with from one thing to the next, when the Knights Templars were systematically hunted down and executed Friday the 13th of 1307, October, they decided, okay, you know what? Let's just go our separate ways. And hence the Freemasons were founded from of the Knights Templars.
Yeah.
It could be. It could have just been. I mean, if you're a Roman centurion and you've ended up in the UK, you've gone through a lot of countries at this point. So to end up in the UK, you've pretty much walked from Rome to the UK. So you've gone through France, you've probably gone through Spain, Germany, a lot of places.
It's a long hike.
You've now walked from England to Scotland, and you might have got Scotland and thought, you know what, I'm done with this. And they might have gone native. They might have just thought, you know what, fellas, this ain't worth the effort, is it? This ain't worth the hassle. Let's just live here. Let's just settle down here. It's nice here. And it could have been something as simple as that. But we'll never know. I mean, unless something turns up at some point, we'll never know what happened to them, because there's just never been a trace of them.
Yep. Do you guys have quicksand there?
Do we have what?
Do you guys have quicksand there?
No, but we do have. We don't have quicksand, but we have bogs and swamps and things like that. Definitely. And again, up in Scotland, I mean, this is as well going back 1,000 years. The weather's quite gnarly up in Scotland. I mean, it will kick your ass. So there's a lot of things that could have got them, a hell of a lot of things. And then at that time as well, there still would have been bears and wolves in Scotland as well. There isn't anymore, but there were bears and wolves in Scotland. Could have been bears and wolves. No one knows.
Yeah. So, hey, on a slightly different topic, Scott, where for you. Where is Pluckley Village? I've heard a little bit about that.
Ooh. No idea. Let me have a look. I will tell you exactly how close Pluckley Village is or isn't to me.
Because they're talking about that's one of the most haunted places in England.
So is York. So is York.
I want to do that Jack the Ripper.
Well,
walk
York,
over
yeah,
there.
definitely. York, you can go on a lot of ghost tours in York. Let me find where it is. I think it's up north. I don't think I'm near it.
All right,
It sounds northern.
good night.
Good night, cheesecake. Much love.
York is the most haunted place in all of the UK.
Right, where are we?
That could be.
I'm 3 hours away from it.
Go away. That was a little
It's just
drive for
outside of
you.
London. It's just outside of London, Pluckley.
Okay.
Oh shit.
Well, you're 3 hours away from York, Scott.
I'm pretty much 3 hours away from everywhere. I live in the middle of England, and England's tiny, so I'm pretty much the furthest I'm away from anywhere is about 4 hours typically.
He's central England.
Yeah, I'm bang in the middle. So I mean, the UK is tiny. It's difficult for kind of America and Canada to get their head around just how small we are. But I mean, we're smaller than Florida. That's how small the UK is. So to travel I can travel from the bottom of the UK to the top of it in a day. The very bottom to the very top in a day, maybe 18 hours. So we're small. So where I live, I'm typically 4 hours away from the furthest of anything. I'm away from anything is 4 hours typically. I mean, to the top of Scotland, maybe 6 or 7 hours. But yeah, I'm close to a lot of stuff. But it's it's a funny one. We are a tiny country. So it's
I don't know about that.
We are little. We are small, man. I mean, compared to let's say America, we are little.
Well, yeah, but you know what? Geography and acreage is not the end all be all either.
No, of course not.
You know,
but it's
we proved that during the World War II thing that we just got done with.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a funny one. I get asked quite a lot. Are you anywhere in this? You're anywhere in that? I'm 4 hours away. You're almost guaranteed I'm 4 hours away. It's it's always the way because I am smack in the middle of the UK.
Yeah, I was reading up about Pluckley. They've got a guy they call the Screaming Man, who apparently fell to his death from the Village Brickworks.
We have a lot. There's a lot of stories like that. I mean, there's one that's I've always found quite freaky about a hitchhiker, a girl, before the Mersey Tunnel in Liverpool that appears on Christmas Eve. A lot of people have picked up this girl on Christmas Eve as there's a thing called the Mersey Tunnel, goes under the Mersey River, and they pick her up, and she's always described as wearing like biker leathers. And it's very quiet when she always gets in the back. And so typically when they get to the other side of the tunnel, she's gone. She's not in the car anymore.
Wow.
And there have been instances of people turning around and going back through the tunnel to find her. And rumor has it, she came off the back of a motorcycle, her boyfriend's motorcycle on Christmas Eve. And died in the tunnel. I don't know how true it is or isn't, but that's the story I've heard. And a lot of people have said they've picked up this hitchhiker that just vanishes. And people have gone back through the tunnel thinking she must have fallen out the car, jumped out the car.
Yeah.
But no, there's been multiple. There's a place as well near me where and I don't know. Again, this is there's the one belief, the paranormal belief, but then there's also the scientific belief that maybe something else is going on, where people say they feel a hand grab the wheel of the car and turn it, and a lot of people have ended up in a ditch because they said they were driving and it felt like someone grabbed the wheel and turned the wheel and they went into a ditch. And loads of people have ended up in this ditch. And they all said the same thing. It felt like a hand grabbed the wheel and turned the car and fell into a ditch. Drove into a ditch.
Interesting.
So there's the one thought that something is grabbing the wheel and turning them in there. There's the other thought that ley lines and things like that, maybe, magnetic pull, all of a sudden your car just goes because you're going over something that could be there as well.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, it was interesting. We rented a car when I hit a deer with mine and it was being repaired. And my insurance company rented us a car, and we did a little trip in the car, and this new car was a Toyota Corolla that was outfitted with the lane departure technology. So if you, and it wasn't so bad for the lines, the dotted lines in the middle, but if you were for say on the right hand lane and you drifted off just a little bit, the car, you could actually feel the steering wheel would actually and go to turn. And I'm sitting there going, you know what? And we tested it one time. I will never do this again. Coming up on a turn, I just took my hands off the wheel to see what had happened, and it did. It rode the white line around. Yeah. But I'm like, yeah, no, I could see that being nope. That would be a bad juju.
Me personally, like I said, I am a skeptic. That doesn't mean I disrespect other people's beliefs, but I've had 3 incidents in my life that I would say could be written as paranormal. But the kind of the science mind in me explains it in a different way, but it could be. But one of them I've got no explanation for it at all. Never have had. So the first one is I went with my father as a plumber who I would have been about 12, I think, at the time, and he was working on a new block of apartments in a small town by us. And he said to me, "You wait till you walk in there." And I went, "Okay." And when you walked in this place, literally all the hairs on your arms and neck stood up the moment you walked in. It was the strangest thing. The second you crossed the doorway, you could feel something. And I'm like, that is so odd. You step outside, you couldn't feel it anymore. You stepped inside immediately, and you could feel kind of misery in this place. It was horrible. And it turns out that what this used to be was a workhouse. So a few hundred years ago, this is a place where they sent single mothers and orphans and places like that, and basically worked them to death. And you could feel the misery in the brickwork. You could feel that energy kind of in there. So when you crossed it, it just felt horrible. And it was a real strange sensation. So there's that one. Another one I had was in Florida. So I was in Florida, and it was my first night there. We were on vacation, and I woke up, and I had a sheet wrapped around my head, and I could feel something kneeling on my chest and scratching at my face. And I grabbed the sheet and I threw it across the room and sat up in bed. Nothing. Now, I've had people say to me, "Oh God, it was like some spirit or something was attacking you." Now, it didn't happen the other 13 nights I was there, just as the first night I was there. What I think happened was I was jet lagged as shit in a very strange place, in a weird bed. Somehow I managed to get a sheet wrapped around my head. And what was actually scratching at my face was probably me in my sleep trying to get the sheet off my face. Woke up kind of in a lucid state, and that's what happened. But there are other people that say otherwise. But the one I can't explain, and this is, I've told this story to a few people. No one believes us, because there were 3 of us that witnessed this. But we'd been on vacation. We were young. I would have been about 20, and it was me and some buddies had gone on kind of like a boys' vacation, a lot of drinking, and we came back on kind of the cheapest flight we could get, and we landed back in the UK around about 2 a.m, and we were driving home, and we had to take a diversion, and we were driving on the back roads, which were all kind of, you're basically driving through forests at this point, and something ran out in front of our car, and this sounds ridiculous to say it, but I'll say it. It was a massive dog, a huge dog, right? Massive. Little car, but at one point, both the front wheels were on top of it. So we didn't go like this. We felt a bang, like a speed bump. That's how big it was. So it was the length of the car. It was brilliant white. It had massive yellow eyes. And then we looked in our rearview mirror and we saw this thing start.
Oh, we lost him. Oh, you're muted. Scott's in the basement. Jason, you're muted, buddy.
I'm back.
Grr. Okay, never mind.
Where did I get to? We hit this thing. So we drove. We saw, like I said, we saw this thing heading toward the car. We just got out of there and we just drove, because there's nothing like that in the UK. Right? We don't have any animal like that in the UK. Nothing. Right? It wasn't a cow. It wasn't a sheep. It wasn't. It was a massive dog. Right? Huge, bigger than any dog I've ever seen. And the car, all four wheels went over it. It sprung straight back up and started heading towards us. It was brilliant white, massive yellow eyes, and it scared the shit out of us. We didn't talk about it. None of us spoke about it for about a month. And it wasn't until one evening when my friend Tom, who was driving that night, turned to me and went, "What was that thing?" And I thought, oh God, I didn't want. None of us wanted to talk about it, right? Because it was too weird. And to this day, I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I have no explanation for what it was. But it's that was very, very weird. So that's the only real freaky thing I've had that I have absolutely zero explanation for at all. It was very, very strange, but no idea. I looked into it as well. I looked into the any reports in the area of any kind of like weird ass animals or anything like that, but nothing. There was no damage to the car. We checked the car after as well. There was no hair in the grill, nothing, no damage.
Wow.
We hit the thing, we hit it at speed. So weird. But yeah, I have no explanation for what that was.
Weird. They were coming for you. It's the hounds of Baskerville.
We've tried to rationalize it as much as we can, but we've gone, was it a goat? And it's like, no. And it's like, because even if it was a goat, being hit by a car at 60 miles per hour and all four wheels driving over you, goat wouldn't get back up and start heading toward the car.
Not much, no.
No. Weird. So I literally have no explanation.
Guys, I'm going to jump off here and cook dinner. I will catch you all later.
Oh, shit. What
Pleasure, Derek.
Yep.
Always a pleasure, buddy. Thanks for coming out.
You're welcome.
Dude. Yeah, I was saying while we were waiting on you to come back, Scott, one of the couple of the interesting things that caught my attention about Pluckley reading on it is there's a highwayman that people have seen who was run through with the sword and pinned to a tree.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the one that scares me, the one that scares me the most, is a schoolmaster who's actually hanged by the children he's teaching.
What?
Yeah.
That's pretty savage.
Supposedly, yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, how bad a teacher do you have to be?
Kids hang you.
Right?
You know, and in the back of my head, now this is how twisted I am. In the back of my head, all of a sudden the music's coming up. All we are is bricks in the wall.
Yeah, no.
Right? Big boys.
This is we've got literally thousands of those stories. There are so many. I mean, one of the strangest ones we've got as well, and you can go and see this thing, is we've got a thing called the chained oak. The chained oak in Staffordshire, and they've actually made an amusement ride based around this thing, but it's a true story. And it's the Earl of Alton, the story goes, was heading back through the heading back from, I think, London to home, and a gypsy lady stepped in front of his carriage, asking him for money. She basically said, it's cold, I'm poor, and he said no, and she cursed him. And she pointed to the oak and she said, every time a branch from that tree falls, a member of your family will fall. And that was the curse. So a couple of weeks go by and there's a lightning storm that hits the tree and a branch falls from the tree. And sure enough, I believe it's his niece dies the next day. That's enough for the Earl of Alton. He's like, I don't need a second incident. So he had the entire tree chained up, all of it. He had the whole tree wrapped in chains. And when I first heard this story, I thought, there's no way that's true. You can see the tree now. And because these chains have been on there for 300 years, 400 years, they're absorbed into the tree. So it's all chained up. So you can still see these chains embedded in the tree. So you've got this massive oak tree, and just these chains come out the middle of it, all wrapped around the branches, so no branch could fall from it. And a branch did fall from it about 3 years ago. And they checked in on the family, and they had no report of a death. But yeah, so you can go see the chain. We've got so many weird things like that.
Wow, that's cool.
Makes you wonder what had happened if the tree got cut down.
Yeah, it's a really bizarre piece of our history. We've got loads of things like that. It's because we're an old country, so we've got hundreds of weird, freaky stories like that.
Oh, and then you got the witches of Lancaster Castle.
Yep.
That looks pretty. That's like y'all's version of the Salem witch trials.
We have Wookiee Hole as well, which, despite its name, is not Chewbacca's butt. We've got an area called Wookiee Hole, which is everything about it is weird, right? So, Wookiee Hole, there's a massive cave cavern in there that shouldn't be there, because if you did the mathematics on it on paper, if you did the math, it should have collapsed. There's no way this whole cave should be there. Something should be holding it up, and it isn't. It's just held up on its own. But the story goes that there was a witch that had been hexing the local town. So a monk chased her into Wookiee Hole, and there's a waterfall that goes in. He blessed the water and turned the waterfall into holy water, trapping her in there. And as the water dropped down from the ceiling, it turned her to stone. Huh. So when you go in there now, you can see the stone formation that looks like a witch. So there's this stone formation inside Wookiee Hole that looks like a petrified witch. Oh, and she's got a dog with her as well. So you can go to Wookiee Hole, you can see you can see her and her dog, and they're in there. Oh, but it's a weird place. I mean, it's just the whole thing about it is trippy. It's a really weird place, but it's fun. I've took the kids there a few times, but it's it's a strange place. But we've got, as I said, we've got so much of that. The Pendle Witches is another one as well. But it's everywhere, and this is why I'm annoyed that we don't embrace Halloween more, because every town's got this thing that they should really celebrate come Halloween, you know. Yeah. And we don't, which is kind of a shame. But they really should bang the gong for their local ghost story. I mean, we've got local ghost stories around here. We've got one called the Blue Lady that wanders around a hill by us at night, and you can go and see it. And if you see the Blue Lady, you're pretty much doomed. But every kid I know went looking for her. But yeah.
I see something here on St. Briaville's Castle. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, there's someone as well that's got the screaming skull. If you take the skull away from the house, you just can keep hearing screaming. There's loads of weird things. We got so many.
Eek.
Yowza.
Bardsley Island.
Bardsley?
I don't know that one.
It's off the coast of Wales. Little Bardsley Island is said to be the burial site of thousands of saints. There are rumors that King Arthur may be buried here, and a whole monastery of monks, accounting for the ghosts in robes said to haunt the island. The monastery was dissolved by King Henry VIII, but the island remains a place of spiritual importance and pilgrimage. It's also famous for its wildlife, including Manx shearwaters. What's a chaw? Chough?
No idea.
Yeah, and gray seals.
Wow.
We have I said, we got some really weird stuff, man. Yeah. Because we got loads of castles. They're freaky as well. You go to any castle, they're freaky. You can walk around any of them, they're kind of odd.
Now this one I have heard about, the Theatre Royal on Drury Lane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's supposed to be mad haunted. The Drury Lane.
Oh yeah.
Drury Lane is where they used to exhibit the Elephant Man at Drury Lane.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. All right.
There was a nursery rhyme about that, wasn't there? Something who lives on Drury Lane.
Probably.
Oh, the Muffin Man lived on Drury Lane. That's what it was.
There you go. So you get, again, London in itself. London is absolutely filled with those things. It's ridiculous. So you got loads. Because you go down to the Whitechapel, you got all the remnants of Jack the Ripper down there. and you've got just it goes on and on and on. It's a strange place.
What was
Cool stuff on every turn.
Yeah. What was it? I think the movie was called Life Force. Was the one they did about space vampires that came down to London?
I've never seen it, but I want it.
I've never seen. That sounds fantastic, though.
It's an 85 film, and basically, I don't want to give a whole lot away if you haven't seen it, but basically, these astronauts, English astronauts, return from some kind of a mission, and they bring back some samples. And the samples turn out to be more than what they expected. And needless to say, it's kind of a cross between zombies and vampires, but they're different kinds of vampires. And it's an interesting movie. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it. It's 1985 British science fiction horror film directed by Toby Hooper.
Oh, nice. There was this is going back 20, it's got to be 20 years, if not more. There was a beer company over here called Stella that ran a promotion called Stella Screen, where they showed movies in either in the location it was filmed or a very similar location to it. And I went to a couple of them. There's a couple I didn't see. I'm kind of gutted. Like you could go and watch The Holy Grail at the castle where The Holy Grail was filmed. Okay. So you could watch it. You could watch Monty Python and the Holy Grail in Camelot, basically.
That's pretty cool.
But the one I did get to go and see is I went to see An American Werewolf in London, in an abandoned tube station, in an abandoned subway station.
Oh wow!
So they did a screening of it down there. It was awesome. So when you went down there, had it all decked out, so you could hear wolves howling down the end of the. It was really good. And they did a screening of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in the Victorian operating theatre that we've got over here. So it was really good. But so there's all kinds of freaky stuff. If you ever visit the UK and that's kind of what you're looking for, you can trip over that stuff. It's everywhere.
Cool. Yeah, y'all like I said, y'all have a rich history on stuff.
They did in the summer. This is off topic, but it's interesting because in the summer here they had a viewing of Jaws, and they did it for a weekend, and they did it at night. And they put like a screen on the beach, and people that went had to sit in like inner tubes on the water.
That's awesome.
and watch the movie.
That's awesome. That's really good.
That's cool.
It's a different way of going about it.
Yeah, that's so cool.
What do you guys want to do next week?
I don't know.
Jack the Ripper?
Well, you do Jack the Ripper. You want to do Jack the Ripper?
Sure.
I'm interested in that story.
We do Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper is a weird story. Jack the Ripper is quite a good one because it's the earliest example that I know of tabloid media. That was a big part of the Jack the Ripper story, was the fact that it sold newspapers.
And they never caught him, right? Or they believe they did, or
no, they never did. There are loads of theories on who he was. And there are plenty of people that will say, "Oh, we know who he was." And like, yeah, do you? Because you get one group of the Jack the Ripper enthusiasts. There's a whole community, millions of people that are into this, and each one of them falls into a sect where they're like, "It was this guy, it was this guy, it was this guy," and they all believe they've got the definitive proof of who it was, which pretty much says none of them have the definitive proof of who it was. It's an interesting one. I mean, even if they did, at this point now, it's that far later. Somebody went, "Oh, we found out it was George Smith." You're like, "Well, who was that?" Just some guy. That's all it would tell us now. So it's but it is an interesting story of how it came about and how much it was true and how much of it wasn't, and whether or not it was one guy is another one as well. Because a lot of the Jack the Ripper deaths are attributed to one person, but what we know about sort of serial killers now, a lot of it doesn't add up.
Yeah.
We have a similar thing with the Black Dahlia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, we could do the both because I mean they're both interesting topics.
We could do unsolved mysteries.
Unsolved. I love it.
There's
There
a
you
lot.
go.
There's a lot of those.
Just weird
So you
things
guys
that were never
pick one
solved.
and I'll pick one. We'll all do one. We'll do an
Yeah.
unsolved
Alright.
mystery, like each of us.
Okay,
that'd be
that
good.
works.
That
Perfect.
sounds really good.
That works. Yeah, we can
Yeah,
do
we'll
that.
do that. Okay, I'm going to call it, fellas. Always a pleasure.
Yeah.
You
Gonna go
too,
eat some
sir.
turkey.
Good to see you again.
You
Yep.
too.
Thank
Chris-
you, brother.
Chris got to go get comatose.
Yeah, I'm gonna eat turkey and fall asleep. I
I'm
don't
in
know.
Germany on Wednesday, so hopefully I'll have some German stories to tell you when I get back.
Oh,
Very good.
beautiful. Well, safe travels, bud.
Yep.
Thank you, man. I'll see you next week.
All right, guys.
All right, be good.
Bye-bye.
Night.
Bye.
I'll catch up with you later. Are you gonna
Yes.
be around later?
I might
All
be
right.
here and there. I got tonight. We're switching the desk around, and
Oh,
I
okay.
got to also go out and get some groceries.
Okay.
But that's it. Yeah, because I'm going to do I'm going to do this this loaded meatloaf. I got to figure out exactly how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do the coffin shaped loaded meatloaf.
Oh, sweet. All right.
Yep.
I'll send you a message if you're on.
Yeah. Send it over.
Much love.
And same to you, sir.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Bye.